Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible Smite experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome, welcome, welcome here to the SPL Phase 2 of Season 8, all powered by Alienware. My name's Gormizer, and I'm going to be here to answer all of your important, stressing questions, right? Like, Gore, did you get a haircut over this past weekend? Absolutely. Gore, that's a really nice shirt that you have on there. I've got good news for you because you can get this shirt just as well right now. Shop.smiteproleague.com. All proceeds from these Pride shirts and Pride merch will be going to the Trevor Project and helping in their fight to help with crisis management as well as suicide prevention and young LGBT plus youth. So it's all going to a good purpose. Plus, you get to rep the SBL and you get to rep the Pride that comes through. So if you want to, go ahead and get that. Only available until July 22nd. So make sure you get your hands on yours now. And of course, the third most pressing question, I had to count there, it's very difficult to do live, which is, who's going to be on the desk with you? Well, that's Melissa Posada. It's the best Taco sitting over there. And Taco, I'm excited. We're starting things off. This is, I keep calling this weekend, at least I referred to it yesterday and in my head, as the final homage to the first half of Season 8, because it's the last week that we get to see Boots.
Very last week that we get to see Boots, but it's an exciting change that we have soon to come here, Gore. But for right now, the pro players, they are still going to be playing on this current patch iteration. I believe 8.6?
Yeah, 8.6.
Could be.
Bonus.
Bonus balance as well included with that. But the primary thing to keep in mind, though, Gore, is that while the Boots change will definitely send things for a bit of a tailspin, I think right now we are going to be looking at the pros largely just trying to capitalize on the performances that we saw from playoffs 1 and even split 1 into now.
I'm excited to see how some of these changes are going to affect today, just because the small changes that happen for this weekend will cascade, I believe, into next week, and we'll have to see who exactly it affects, but we'll have to see what exactly is going to be happening this weekend. First, you might have seen it, but coming up next, the Atlantis Leviathans versus the Valhalla Valkyries. We'll get to see a little bit more of the Valkyries. We haven't seen them in a few weeks. Leviathans, after their loss to the Bolts there in the playoffs, haven't seen them in a while either. Later today, the Bolts versus the Warriors, and then, of course, we'll get to see some of the rest of the teams throughout the rest of the weekend. And there's a lot of things, I think another big pressing question that would be on everyone's mind, because this was the big talking point in Phase 1. The idea was coming into Phase 2, this is where it all kicks off. Worlds matters now. Every set is going to be a big difference. But a lot of people have noticed online that some of the players still aren't here. It's having those issues, kind of either getting visas or what have you, in order to get everybody located into Atlanta. And as such, we've kind of reformatted the rest of the year so that Phase 2, very similar to Phase 1, they're playing for that Phase 2 playoffs, not the Phase 1 playoffs, those already happened. Still looking for a good amount of money, still going to have to deal with that towards the later half of the phase. But as of right now, maybe a little less pressure, specifically on the Valkyries after their performance in Phase 1, to immediately turn things around. They still have some time to warm things up.
Valkyries definitely had a relatively rough split 1, and granted, being the only team, I believe, that actually has all 5 members having to play from Europe and not the traditional part of Europe, because in the UK, ping's actually not as terrible, but for somebody like Johnny, who's quite literally from like Serbia, if I'm recalling correctly, it's just a little bit of a stretch, I think. And so the cool thing is that they have had this downtime in between the playoffs up till now in split 2 here at Gore, and so I do think that we could see potentially revitalize Valkyries roster, because those guys, they don't like to lose. No one does in the SMITE Pro League. And performances aside, I'm willing to bet that this is a team that's looking to make their mark now in Split 2.
I'm excited to see if they can, because they have maybe the toughest team, one of the toughest teams. I would argue there's 4 of them you really don't want to have to face first. Unfortunately for them, they're going to end up having to go up against the Atlantis Leviathans here first. And the matchup that we were talking about a lot, Taco, when we were looking at this in Phase 1, ended up being a lot of Emilito, right? He had a really, really insane Chronos game, but he's going up against Yarkor here, and Yarkor has had insane on-her games, he's had insane Chiron games, he's had insane... Name a hunter, he's played it, he's looked good on it.
Yeah, it's almost like a different kind of hunger here for the Leviathans, because that playoffs performance, I don't think really alluded to the potential that this team really has here. And Hardcore, he's definitely been a standout member. I've been really impressed too from what we've seen out of Julio and Shinto. And so the real question here, I think, Gore, is how well is this dual lane matchup going to fare? Because Vrongyu, being heavily regarded as potentially one of the best supports right now in the SMITE Pro League overall, and I think it's for good reason, Gore, because when you watch Vrongyu and Hardcore run it down, they just make it work and they make it look effortless.
It's got to be nice, right? When it's not only are you a phenomenal hunter player, as we got to learn. I mean, like, going from solo, he had a very wide god pool last year over in solo lane, swaps to carry, and everyone's like, all right, well, like, this will be fun in like 6 months, right? We'll see you then. I think he made it a goal to solo out every other hunter, and I think he has, at this point, soloed out every other hunter.
That's half the fun of playing ADC in the SMITE Pro League. If you're not looking for the 1v1s, I mean, you got to get the ego ready, you know?
Yeah, and like you said, with Rongyu at your side, you can do no wrong. We actually have Yarkor standing by for an interview, and this is actually going to be really fun. Yarkor, I mean, first and foremost, it's been a little while. How have you guys been handling the break?
I mean, we have been doing good. We have been just chilling, like taking our time, doing our things, like just resting from everything.
Relaxing for you guys for a long time was just still playing Smite. You would just grind it in a different way. Is that still what's been going on, or have you actually been relaxing?
No, we actually have been relaxing. I think we haven't played that much like we used to do. And we just been chilling, like just taking some day off, maybe playing 1 or 2 ranks a day. Just chilling in general.
Just coasting here into phase number 2. And I hate to bring up bad memories, but the last time we got to see you guys, maybe wasn't exactly the performance you wanted to put on in the playoffs. Are there some adjustments that you've made from those phase 1 playoffs to now, like some things you've been trying out? Obviously, with midseason next week, a lot of the changes are going to be happening then, but do you have a different flavor of Leviathans for us for the rest of the year?
I think every single time we have a lose like that, we have like the talk post lose, and I think we like every time we understand what we need to do, and that is what we're going to like bring and try to change for our next game. So it's that little thing that I think like not anything like God specific. It's more like a mentality thing that I feel like we struggle sometimes. So
Well, it sounds like you guys have figured out a lot of the little things that you've been looking at, and I'm excited to see how you're going to play here through Phase 2. Of course, you've always looked good, so I'm expecting a little bit more. Good luck in your games, man, and thanks for your time.
thank you.
I mean, Taco, again, they're a team that is very good at self-reflecting. They can recognize where they've done wrong, where they've done right. And as much as like some people will like, and I'll even admit it, they've got a nice cocky attitude sometimes. They can come into it sure of themselves. They do live up to that play most of the time.
I don't think it was a matter of overconfidence, though, for the Leviathans, where things kind of went south during that playoffs performance. It was just a lot of teams upping their game during that time period. But it is interesting, though, Gore, to see that, not necessarily humbleness, but I think it does some good for just about any pro player in the league to take some time for a little bit of a mental reset. So it's interesting to see that team dynamic shining through there from Hardcore's perspective. And it definitely makes me even more interested to see what the Valkyries have in store for us today, because I'm certain that they're well aware of the fact that the Leviathans are definitely going to be looking for establishing some early wins and try and re-boost up that heavy confidence that we saw them carrying throughout so much of Split 1.
Now, at any point in the SMITE timeline, you drop in and you say, okay, so we got these guys named, Hardcore and Wrongyu, and we're going to put them up against, just these no names. We're going to throw them against Imolito and Raffer, and depending on where you drop them in the timeline, everyone's like, you're kidding, right? Like, there's no chance, because back in Season 2, this was a duo lane that was something to be feared. It hasn't really hit that same point so far here in Season 8. It's a little unfortunate, and I think Imolito is someone that we have to put a lot of focus on. I mean, you can see there a 0.7 KDA so far this year. He hasn't really gotten to step up into the shoes that we expected.
And ping woes aside, I do personally feel as though there have been some other issues with this Valkyries roster that have kind of stemmed from the fact of maybe because of the fact that it was the first split, not as much crucialness behind getting those early set wins underneath your belt. But again, this is just a team that has been so competitive for so many years, Gore, with so many of these different players. And now that they have these new rookies being brought on, largely being just Johnny, and I just feel as though this team has so much more to offer him with all of their veteran experience, and it would be really nice to see that kind of blossom here today.
This is one of those teams that I imagine, I mean, as you had kind of mentioned it, like ping issues aside, but it kind of at least feels like they're just weight training, right? Like they're about to come in, they're in the hyperbolic time chamber, they're about to jump out and just beat down anybody when they're ready. Like, this is a team that you honestly expect to make like a really good, I would even argue maybe latter half of the year run, and I'm excited to see how they adjusted. We saw some things in there, some soul pickups specifically over there for Imolito. He's liked to play the Kronos a couple of times, so he doesn't shy away from playing those magical carries, but a lot of the specifically like soul got hit with a nerf on the patch they're playing on. Yanis, something that Zeros has really liked, him and his items got hit with a couple of nerfs. Like, it feels like some of what was making them strong maybe is going to be taken away from them here.
Well, I think for the Leviathans, they're sure to have taken note of the fact that so many teams chose to prioritize Neath bans against the Valkyries as well, because anytime Zeros is able to get his hand on that ADC Hunter, having a little bit of that global impact capability seemed to work out incredibly well for the Valkyries. I think what it really boils down to here, Gore, is just the Valkyries being able to find a composition that will flow for them. Anytime that Zeros is able to actually have some sort of a global impact, whether it's coming through for Giannis or the Neaths, I still expect the Leviathans to definitely take heavy note of that and probably look to, I think, priority ban some of Zeros' more top-end choices.
It's going to be interesting. Again, just the small changes. I think a lot of what we would see from the 8.6 balance or bonus that comes through is going to take place here, and then that's going to translate even harder into what we expect to see next week when boots all of a sudden disappear and everything is topsy-turvy day. We'll have to figure it out. Now they have that little bit of wiggle room where most of what we expected, your King Arthurs, your Cucullins, maybe your Yanis's are all still going to be great. Guess what? Gilgamesh, Tiamat, they're still pretty good as of right now. And so I expect to see those topping off maybe some of these bans.
Well, Leviathans, they're not wasting any time. Already going to remove the Neath and Johnny's AO. Interesting seeing the AO ban here, just because that is a bit of a risk versus reward, but seems as the Leviathans don't even want to take any sort of chances because Ao Kuang does have very heavy late game carry potential. If he's able to find anyone in an isolation scenario, that could be disastrous. And Valkyries, on the other hand, they seem to want to throw all of their reinforcements into getting rid of these high pressure supports. Amir, Yamoja, Vrongi is just not going to get his pick of the litter this time.
I mean, yeah, no, and this is actually a really interesting thing because one of the biggest talking points with the Ao Kuang being banned out there, I got to lift up my laptop. Yeah, the Loki was where I was actually about to pivot because this is someone that was banned for a little bit, like the last half essentially of Phase 1, and is now available for play, but that comes with another, I want to say, kind of curveball, and that's actually going to be here for the Valkyries. Persephone, something that pre-change, I guess, Persephone, that was a huge pick for the Leviathans. Shinto on that OG Persephone, loved it. We'll have to see how she fits in here after all those changes. We haven't really gotten to see her, and so there's those questions as to whether or not she will be a top pick. Evidently not more than Gilgamesh as it stands.
Now, Gilgamesh being such a strong flex pick option for the Leviathans, it makes sense why they would opt for this first, because it could go solo, it could go support, it could go into the jungle. It's really up to the Valkyries to try and decide what they want to try and mitigate that Gilgamesh pressure with. And Sun Wukong, I think, introduces a lot of strong survivability here, Gore. Ducky should be able to hang tight, I think, in that solo lane with the Wukong option. And Wukong also has a great escape from the Gilgamesh and a little bit of dive potential being introduced here, which is great because when paired with the Chiron, you think about the range that Chiron has to offer, and it's essential when you're dealing with the likes of a heavy burst composition such as this top 3 that the Leviathans have opted for.
I mean, Gilgamesh, Raijin, tier. Like, Gilgamesh for, I'm going to guess, Panatom more than likely tier. I mean, we could see it flex over, like you said, maybe to support, but tier, it's going to Julio. Like, there's no question about that one. And that Raijin has looked so good for them lately. You throw the Geb in there, this Chiron, this Wukong. I mean, a lot of the picks over here for the Valkyries feel essential to them, I mean, and they feel iconic in that point. Like, Raffer's had really good Geb games this year. We've seen Emilito specifically have really good Chiron's game, but I know Zeros could play it in mid if he wanted to, and Wukong and Ducky go hand in hand. So this one becomes a lot more interesting. I like the fact that the Valkyries even go to ban out that Danzaburo, because that's where we've seen, at least lately, the counter matchup for that Chiron.
Well, it's not so much a counter matchup as much as it is Danzaburo just having...
like
he has good aggression into the Chiron, and his ultimate can also follow that giddy up relatively well, but I'd be more keen to keep my eyes on her ban specifically for the Valkyries. If they're already taking note of the Danzaburo, there's nothing to really stop Hardcore from wanting to opt for yet another early game presence piece here, and on her, also having that CC immunity can be great for not necessarily having to burn his purification beads anytime Sun Wukong and Geb are looking for that big initiation. But initiation is the main thing that I'm concerned about here, Gore, because Geb is fantastic at that. But only if he can make it through that first laning phase period, because he is just so susceptible to being focused out and just killed. He just gets blown up before he really has a time to get that tankiness, that defensiveness online, and he's not the most mobile god either, because remember, the rollout can be stopped as long as you catch him before he hits that period of CC immunity. So with the gods like Raijin and Tyr specifically, I do feel as though Raffer could have some struggles here on this Geb. Raijin being great with that Thunder Crash at just interrupting, although it would be a bit of a chance there because you are using your escape technically as an initiation feature. But Leviathans, when you have this much burst pressure that they've already opted for in their top 3, it's pretty open-ended, and seeing the Uller ban is an interesting take from the Valkyries, but it seems as though they've definitely noticed that Hardcore has a tendency to want to lean towards a little bit more burst potential.
He likes to fight, and I think Uller does that pretty well, right? He's really good at that point. Of course, that is something that Geb can help alleviate, at least getting rid of the axe stun. But like you said, that's only during the laning phase if Geb happens to be there. Otherwise, he's out of there, and all of a sudden it maybe starts to favor it. I will give some credit over to Raffer, though. He likes playing like the Ganesh, the Gebs, the slower picks, and we'll have to see. The biggest one is the mighty fall, I think, that comes through Yanis from first pick, first ban, all the way down to making it through all 10 bans even, and now getting picked up by the Valkyries. Maybe not something that the Leviathans cared too much about, but I mean, Soul Gem was hit, Yanis himself was hit, like a lot of the things he wanted to build around are no longer available to him. How is that going to fare? I mean, he's a lot of the damage on the side of the Valkyries right now.
A lot of the damage is on the side of the Valkyries, technically, if they can make it to that point, Gore, because, again, you just have to remember they've opted for relatively low pressure, although the Giannis should help a little bit more in terms of that survivability aspect that we were kind of hoping for from Raffer, and a set to kind of round things out. So there are definitely some early game elements present here for the Valkyries. My main concern, again, though, Gore, is just largely the fact that it's all early game presence from the Leviathans. I'm definitely expecting them to try and take advantage of their early game potential, and if they're able to actually focus out on buff invades like the way that this composition is screaming its intentions for, that could pose a lot of issues for the Valkyries, because you don't necessarily have to die to be on the losing end of things. You just need to be suppressed and stripped of farm from the map.
And we're coming into this interesting meta, or I guess, control right now. Like Medusa, seeming, at least to me, felt like she came out of nowhere. A lot of people start picking her up. We've seen her as a mainstay. This feels weird to say even still, even though I got used to it for a few weeks, but Medusa, Fafnir, you add the Raijin, like I feel like Leviathans have a lot of control coming into this game.
And Set works best whenever he's able to actually isolate someone, but when you're dealing with the likes of the Leviathans, this is a composition that relies on staying together. So for Medusa and a Fafnir, that's already great introduction to a lot of interrupt against that Kingslayer ultimate from the Set. And another thing Set really hates dealing with is slows. There are a lot of slows present here from the Leviathans, and one Geb shield can't cleanse them all.
I got a scary number I just looked up for you. 90% is the win rate Shinto has on this Raijin. That is a very, very frightening thing to think about. Something that they've been favoring a lot more. And like you had said, like someone who can be aggressive. I mean, you know, harken back to last year, we've kind of memed Twig about it for a while, but using that Thunder Crash to get in to a fight. But admittedly, I mean, Raijin has been one of the more successful over the last 2 years, really, mid laners that we've gotten to see.
I do want to focus out a little bit more, though, Gore, I think, on this side lanes for both of these teams, because we know for a fact the Leviathans, all throughout Split 1, all throughout the playoffs, they demonstrated such a heavy focus towards that duo lane specifically. And if this is beneath them on the Gilgamesh, like I believe it to be because of that tier, has to be for Julio. We've seen him run it down so many times with that god. It's rather problematic to think about what happens to this Geb, Gore, and it's just so tough for me to imagine what it must be like in Raffer's shoes. I mean, he's been here 1,000 times over, but Raffer does tend to perform best whenever he is on a god that can produce some of the more defensive elements, and I think that Geb is exactly what you're looking for if you're looking for just immediate counter initiation.
I mean, it's going to be a hefty game, I guess is the best way to describe it for the Valkyries here. And I think there's a lot that comes to it. I mean, this Wukong, again, I have to go back to it. You mentioned the side lanes. Like, Julio's tier is something to be feared, but Ducky loves this Wukong. He went to it a lot last year. He's played it a lot this year. And that matchup, especially when we've been seeing, you know, King Arthur and Cucullin dominate so far this year, how's the Wukong going to be able to fare?
Wukong is he's just safe. I don't think you can really ever go wrong with he kind of does just live, but that could almost be a bit of a negative for the Valkyries, because you don't want somebody that's just going to be surviving throughout these team fights. You need to be able to provide some initiation. You need to be able to provide some peel, and while I think Geb is great at the peeling aspect, it's really just the initiation that seems a little bit more lackluster here for the Valkyries, and for this Giannis even as well, because we've seen mid laners try to be super aggressive through space and times and try to just look for an opening pick if they can actually land that through space and time damage, but it's still just questionable because, again, with all the different elements of crowd control that we're seeing, particularly those surrounding knockup and just slows from the Leviathans, I think that those are some of the more problematic ones to try and actually cleanse.
Well, I will let everyone know now the game is currently being remade, and so I'm going to give you some facts and then you can go marinate on it while we get to a break, and that is that 3 of the top 5 KDAs so far this year, they're on the Leviathans. And then when you look at it, their support has a higher KDA than some of the carries in the league. So just marinate on that one. We'll be right back, guys, with game number 1 here of the Leviathans versus the Valkyries. Welcome back, everyone, as we jump into it. You can see the picks and bans once again before we do eventually jump into this first game. The Valkyries versus the Leviathans, game number 1. I probably should have had way more. I had like 3 minutes to plan something to say there, and instead I just sat here dancing to Crab Rave the entire time.
And to be fair, you were on beat the entire time.
Look, I've been playing music since I was 8. If I wasn't on beat, I'd have to I'd extradite myself. I don't know where to, but gone forever.
Fair enough. Do you think that's something you could actually play though? On the bagpipes?
Probably.
Probably.
Because it doesn't have a lot of notes. Bagpipes only have, this is a fun fact for you, bagpipes only have 9 notes to play with. They go from a G all the way up to an A right after that G. They have an octave plus 1, so it's not a lot to wiggle with. There's not a lot of wiggle room, a lot of grace notes to try and increase the flourish on it. I was trying to learn Crab Rave on my guitar, though, but it doesn't sound as good without the beat behind it. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
On the guitar?
If it's just, yeah, especially on the guitar. Maybe that's probably what it was. But either way, this draft has been looking good. The Valkyries, it feels like a very Valkyrie. I think I was talking to Mifflin about it. Something that feels very Raffer-centric as well that he likes to draft. But the Leviathans, I mean, most of these are just power picks, let alone the fact that they feel good for their players.
It will be fun, though, to see how Beneatham and Johnny match up specifically in these jungle presences, because both Gilgamesh, forces to be reckoned with. It really just comes down, I think, to who gets off on the better foot here.
I mean, a lot of pressure. I would argue on to Johnny. I mean, he had a lot of good games last time around. He hits 4 bans in this game. A lot that is targeting over towards him. Can the Valkyries take this one, or will the Leviathans win game number 1? Let's go down to Hindu and Mifflin to find out.
Much go and Taco on the desk. Yeah, apologies for the technical delays there. Obviously, a couple of remakes coming through just to make sure these teams are both happy. And Miff, we're in 8-2, 1-1, 1-1 here today. What are you expecting?
8-2. Are you asking for the odds of the match?
No, 8-2, 1-1, 1-1.
I have no clue what
Season 8, Phase 2, Week 1, Set 1, Game 1.
No, I'm glad that I had to ask, because I'm sure the fans at home were just as confused.
No, they're intelligent beasts,
Well,
Mifflin.
yeah, I'm not questioning the intelligence of chat. I would never do
The
that.
keyword there was beasts,
Yeah,
by the way.
Animals.
Absolute animals in chat. Enjoying the crab wave there. Yeah, you get me for today, and Mifflin alongside too, but here's a little look at how the drafts have come out, obviously, as well. I will mention the Geb situation here, Mifflin, first of all, and that's going to be a big one for the most part with this pickup, because Geb and Rafa are pretty good overall. Bear with us on that technical issue there if you saw that, but we're all good. On the end is wrong, you will get his buff. I do like the Geb pick here, Miff, but early game, he is going to struggle, and Taco was talking about this Leviathan squad here today. Very early game focused.
It really is. Once Panatom starts to hit around level 3, really, you got to expect that he's going to have his eyes on Raffer the entire time, but that's not anything Raffer isn't used to. Shinto, though, maybe not used to this level of pressure, dropping down to about half health on that first rotation of waves. I think that this Geb is going to do incredibly well once we get to the team fight phase. It's just whether or not he's able to.
Oh, Panatom got a good little drop kick on a minion there onto zeros, but not enough for a kill just yet. Johnny going to return a bit of damage here. And as we mentioned about the early game a little bit there, Miff, I am turning my attention already towards what Taco was mentioned about the late game draft. The Valkyries have really got here. I mean, longer the game goes on, I'm definitely hedging my bets towards the Valkyries with the composition, at least.
The composition is so good for the late game team fight. They're looking to split up the engagements or get involved early. Zero's forced to use the beads to escape, and luckily for him, he does make it out there by the skin of his teeth. But that's the aggression that you expect to see.
Shinto doesn't have his escape there, but Johnny's not going to get aggressive with that little of a mana, and Panitom wrapping around the back too. Already though, Leviathan's on the aggression, and we kind of mentioned a bit of Raijin and talking about Twig last year, the first proponent of really bringing Raijin back into the league again, and seeing those aggressive Thunder Crashes that everyone once upon a time was like, Dan's game? What's going on? But now people are starting to realize just how potent that can be for setup for the rest of your team. But it is a very big risk for sometimes a very good reward.
Raijin just changes how you have to approach the early game in that mid 2v2, mid lane and jungle once they start to rotate in. It's just, you're getting dope. That's just the name of the game there. The level of damage that they're able to output, even at level 2, maybe even level 3, is more so than just about any other mage right now. So I think that Raijin fits this style of Leviathan's draft really well. And once this even moves into the 3v3 phase in mid, Leviathan's going to be favored maybe 80-20.
80-20. Well, at the moment, it's going to be... Oh, he gets away through the portal as the Panitom jump down did not connect. Zero's under a lot of pressure here early, though, from the Leviathans in the mid lane. One of the times when you can really get aggressive against this Giannis.
It really is. And now Raffer forced to rotate early to try and defend this red buff. Drop kick. Not going to get it. Shockwave looked like it might have. Nope. Tell a lie. That's one of your lines there. Shinto picking up the enemy.
What's one of my lines? Tell a lie?
Yeah, you love saying that, don't you?
Yeah, it's because I tell a lot of lies. That's kind of the reason for the most part. Purple buff invade as well, now coming out from Leviathans too, is successful once again. So that's red and purple on the first respawn of those buffs after the start. They've both been stolen by the Leviathans here already. As expected, this early game aggression from Leviathans is paying off.
It's just that there's no threat from the Valhalla Valkyries support. This Geb at level 3, what's he going to do? Shockwave for 40 damage damage or give someone a 60 HP shield, it's not enough to really dissuade the Leviathans from walking into the enemy jungle. They're going to do it until level 15, probably.
Dare you just be rude towards Geb like that, of all people?
Well, level 20, it's nuts.
To be fair, it is one of the only characters in the game that I've got a little bit of a soft spot for, way too much, because it's very chill to sit there and watch the game and just throw a shield on people and go, did my job, it's all good now.
And it's a good job to have, especially with the draft that the Valhalla Valkyries have come late game. If Zeros is going to be the target of the aggression as he has been, well, Stone Shield's going to get you out of the majority of these sticky situations. It acts as a cleanse as well. And the Leviathan CC is incredibly telegraphed. Drop kick, you stun him against the wall, shield, he's walking away. Someone's fearlessing you, shield, you're walking away.
Panic was waiting around the corner, they got drop kicked into the wall, but a very quick shield from Ratha prevents any follow-up damage there on that left-hand side rotation. Apologies for cutting you off there, Miff. I do want to go back to the Raijin again real quick. Went for the Vampiric Shroud start this game too, which we've not seen as much of, but physical defense on this item, lifesteal on this item, and I'm not upset about the upgrade options if he chooses to go that route.
Yeah, and you don't even have to upgrade it. It's just such good sustain inside that early game as well as survivability. That additional defense allows this Raijin to act aggressive. Just use that Thunderclap in at every opportunity. So I like this starter item pickup, but I'm not sure he's going to go for either of the upgrades. Maybe a Sacrificial Shroud if he's looking to go a little bit more Glass Cannon, but it just doesn't scream Shinto to me.
Yeah, we'll see what Shinto ends up doing as he now hits level 7. Red buff is spawning. Look at where Panitum is. Wrong you on the way. And aggression on to Zeros again. That time through space and time was forced out. Zero still has his beads as the red buff is secured by Johnny there at the tail end just to make sure they don't manage to pick that one up. Leviathans. Valkyries are successful in defending their own buff, but it did cost them the Giannis ultimate.
And not only the Giannis ultimate, but Zeros doesn't get any of that farm. He was too far away to benefit from it, so even with the Leviathans not able to pick up the buff, they're still denying that farm from this Giannis, and delaying that late game phase for him is going to be very impactful once we start to get to those Gold Fury dances around the 10-12 minute mark, or even Pyromancers in the near future. Zeros has got to be frustrated with the pace of this one.
Well, the esports schedule being slightly off tilt with how the year's gone for us. I mean, the boots meta is going to go away eventually. This will be the last week of Pro League with the boots. And so this is kind of, I guess for the pros, are kind of like a lackadaisical, almost like back to the usual of Phase 1 for them a little bit. You know, a couple of buffs here, a couple of nerfs here, until the patch comes through next week. This weekend's games will still have boots involved. Do you reckon it's going to play on mines at all in this? Is it going to be easier to play this set than like next week's set, for example?
Oh, it's definitely going to be easier in that these guys have got, what, like 8 years experience playing around these boots. This is going to be one of the largest meta shifts SMITE has seen just about ever.
Really?
It's going to be pretty hard to play around. I think so, but it's going to be pretty exciting to see how the builds start to round out next week.
And it's going in on Ducky there, but Ducky straight into the Oxform with the Sun Wukong on the defense there. Did go for the Warriors Tabby this game as well, along with the Bluestone, just to keep an eye on builds and how boots have slowly changed as time's gone on, specifically for those reinforced Greaves. Took a bit of a hit in terms of crowd control reduction, and we've seen a couple of people start to move away from that. Rafa, meanwhile, though, very interesting to see him go for that Thebes early on before the boots rush, maybe just in preparation for, you know, next week.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he says, oh, well, my early game's not so good anyway. We're going to be trying to be very conflict-adverse for the first couple minutes of this match, so might as well start to stack up some defense, get a little bit of additional survivability.
I will say Panitum had a pretty good tournament at the playoffs last time round, and I want to see him try and continue this, and so far he has been on the aggressive consistently with these drop kicks. Follow-up there available from Shinto and Rongyu consistently has made this a little bit easy for him as he's still stripping away and trying to delay Johnny getting online a bit more. Space and Time fired out there, though, from left to right, just to see if he could maybe, you know, half-health someone with that spectacular Yana skill.
Yeah, just even scaring off the opposition. Maybe you're worried about the blue buff getting taken, so instead you're just like, okay, well, if I throw this out, that's at least going to act as a deterring factor. If they do step up to the blue buff, I can follow it through with my team and get the rotation advantage. So from there, the Leviathans say, all right, well, Zero's dropped his ult. There's literally no reason to stick around, and they let the blue buff go the way of the Valkyries, but they're continually putting pressure on the mid laner. Zero's now lacking that safety.
Still no kills so far in the 7 minutes at the moment. I mean, the main thing between this, it means the farm situation is a lot better for both teams. Less than 8 minutes in, there's people at level 9 right now in the solo lane, which is kind of crazy to say when you think about that. And meanwhile, in the mid lane again, Raijin going for that Charon's coin as Rongyu gets knocked under the tower for a second. Interesting hammer from Rongyu, just to throw out before jumping away from the tower, or trying to survive there. But that Karen's coin in mid did take a nerf, and I'm surprised to see it still picked up. It just shows, I guess, how dominant it was, that it's still available to be picked up now.
It's just a really good, quick power spike item if you're trying to play aggressively through the mid, and you're trying to do that when you're playing Raijin, but the nerf is just a little bit less magical power on it, so it's not too bad. It's not like the passive took a hit. He's still got that additional movement speed.
Still
so
20% pen.
Yeah, Karen's coin's going to be around for a while.
Yeah, it just kind of helps the curve more than anything else, is what people have been saying for the most part, just in terms of where your ramp is, because when we saw these Rodder to Hootie rushes, sure, you get a huge amount of power, but it's not as if you get a good curve upwards any more than that. Panitum going in against 3, though. Great shield, but badly timed beads at the same time. So both those on cooldown. Nice one from Shinto, though, to avoid the Cataclysm. And Panitum just walks away. Shinto still going in, though, like a madman, looking to keep the pressure rolling, and just realizes he can whittle down the health bar a bit. Rafa will walk away with only, no boots online just yet. But the Thebes definitely helped him out there.
It does. Keeps him a little bit topped off on the HP bar, but already we're starting to see this disparity grow. Leviathans build up a massive gold lead already 9 minutes in. 3,000 gold, 4,000 experience, largely off the back of what you're seeing right now. These red buff invades, the purple buff invades. They've been controlling the mid camps really well as well. And the Valhalla Valkyries have just been kind of on the back foot. It's a byproduct of their composition, to be sure. They're waiting for that mid-game team fight phase, but they are really suffering for lacking on that front line from their support. This Geb really has not been able to do much.
No, not at the moment anyway. I mean, for the most part, he is supposed to be defensive and just make sure people get through the early game. In fairness, there has only been 1 kill in the game so far, so from a Valkyries fan point of view, we're not dying a ton just yet, but we are falling behind, which is kind of expected with this composition. Is there a target gold or is there a target level if you're the Leviathans where you want to be at before Valkyries start to get online?
You probably want to be approaching level 12 and then pushing the issue, going to Gold Furies, getting to those Pyromancers. The second you tick over to that second relic slot, that's really where you want to start to push your advantage before the Valhalla Valkyries are able to utilize their team fight phase. But it's not all doom and gloom so far for the Chaos team. Johnny in particular has been farming up incredibly well, at least maintaining parity for the most part with Panatom, maybe about a half-level lead.
Oh, Ducky fearless onto his tower. Julio didn't have the stance change available to really continue the follow-up there, but forcing Ducky back again. We'll just keep the pressure rolling as Panitum in the jungle just hunting Johnny down again. These drop kicks just constant.
Yeah, just send him away, send him in a wall, doesn't really matter as long as he's able to pick up the farm, and that's exactly what happens yet again. This soul and lane pressure from Julio has been so hard to deal with. Johnny has not been allowed to take those right side back camps almost ever this game.
Well, you're looking at a level lead for every single role of Leviathan so far outside of the Hunter lane. Yorkor versus Emelito in that lane, and so far it's been a farm off between the two. Still, even Stevens there as it stands. For the most part, I felt like I've noticed Leviathans are in their enemy's jungle over their own more often than not.
Yeah, might as well. There's still zero opposition from the Valhalla Valkyries. They're not able to show up in numbers.
Yeah,
Zeros
what can
is
they do, though?
Pretty low level, doesn't have the second defensive relic. There's not much they can do. They just have to bide their time. Maybe try and bring the numbers advantage, use this ultimate from Zeros to shift up these
Space
fights.
and time fight, but Emelito under pressure on this left-hand side because of Shinto's rotation here. They force Valkyries to defend the red buff, and as soon as they do, they find a pick on Emelito's rotation. Rongyu's still looking for the lead, but a nice backstab from Rafa's good. Rafa will not get away, though, from the 4-man armada that Leviathans just sent in there, too. So 3 kills now the way of Leviathans, and Gold Fury could be on the table.
The Valhalla Valkyries have the right idea. They try and show up to defend the red buff. That's where Emelito gets caught out, on rotation to his own red. But they're not there in numbers. They're able to artificially manufacture, the Leviathans that is, these 4 versus 2 or 4 versus 1, occasionally 3 versus 2 engagements, and then they find their pick. They continue the fight. They go back for the invade. If they find another pick, well, Gold Fury is going to fall, and that's exactly what happens this time around 12 minutes in. This lead has now become incredibly stifling. We're approaching 5,000 at the 12-minute mark. That's ridiculous.
You did just say a moment ago, I was just saying how the dual lane was even, at least the 2 hunters will. Well, now there's a 2-level lead for Yorkor in that lane as the golden experience continues to climb. Ducky, though, did get a bit of a window here on the right-hand side to invade the blue. Will take a bit of poke for his discretions. Has ultimate available and may just need it. He'll get to his Suncloud in time. I don't think he'll be able to get over the wall, though, to FG. So he's going to buy as much regen as he can and try and survive still, because this is still not a great spot. Knocked up again. Drop kick cancelled out by the Oxform. Nice work from Ducky, just buying time for those cooldowns.
Yeah, well played. Had he not used the Ox Form there and got knocked out by the drop kick, he immediately would have died to the Winds of Shamash. So Panatom trying his best to make his presence known on that solo side, but the Deaths kind of nailed it themselves. Pretty hard to kill a Sun Wukong. That is an incredibly safe god.
He definitely is safe, but what does he really bring? And I think we've had plenty of casters over the years that are like, what does Sun Wukong really do, man? He just exists, you know?
He's got great dive. His
does.
dive potential is, bar none, some of the best in the game. Once
Really?
you're able to get into that back line, you use the cat stun, no one's able to peel you off. That somersault cloud lets you advance on the map while maintaining CC immunity. It's very hard for Raijin in particular to deal with Sun Wukong. Very often, Raijins, when under threat, will go into the Taiko drum, use the fear. That doesn't work against SWK.
Well, Julio and Ducky in the solo lane, both in Europe right now, so both equal in terms of ping situation for the most part. As Palitom now looking for this blue buff invade. Red buff perfectly secured again by Leviathans on this left-hand side. You can see no effort this time round from Valkyries to try and defend over there. But the right-hand side, they do defend this blue buff.
Yeah, Johnny makes the rotation, deciding that he wants to help out Ducky a little bit, who has been under pressure this entire game, or under his tower for the most part as well, but not enough. Julio still trying to step forward, but not in time to get to that blue buff. Good rotation from Johnny to at least get something on the map, as well as a slight level lead over his opposition.
Do see a couple of these ancient blades coming out so far, and I'm expecting wing blades for everybody here. I think they're a pretty solid item. Movement speed, you know, increase when you get slowed, and some magical protection and some health. Solid item.
It's just so good. It's so cheap. I have to admit it to the fans at home. I did not realize at the beginning of the season that added that magical defense onto Wingblade, but now it's no longer just that utility HP, movement speed, stat stick. It's just a great item to pick up to make sure you're able to continue your dive. So I really am excited to see all the pros starting to really allocate their resources towards it. Take a peek at the build from Panatom as well. Seems like he got the silver talisman from his quest. He's likely going to sell that.
Is he, though? Because, I mean, a bit of magical defense will help against the Giannis as the game goes on.
It could help out, but Panatom likes to
so?
go for a little bit more aggressive builds. I'm expecting something like a Transcendence, maybe.
True. I mean, you can still go that, too, right? You just
Good.
leave it there for the time being. Talisman isn't too bad if you think about it. The movement speed increase. I don't know. I always try to make use of that passive from Gilgamesh other than a bit of bonus gold, you know?
A bit of gold. You sell that, that's like 400 gold in your pocket. And how many guys do they pick that up? That's a lot of gold.
Dude, he's just going to get first blood, and then he's already got that gold anyway, right? So,
well, he didn't get. We're 15 minutes in. He can't get first blood anymore.
We'll be better, and then you don't have that issue, right?
Fair enough. You're right. Panatom, you should have got first blood, and then we wouldn't have had to talk about. Well, you just did. Oh, okay. You're, no Hindu armor here.
Yeah, exactly. You got to work on it, you know. You got to be here for 8 years and deal with everything that gets thrown at you. Wrong, you and Panatom though, doing the classic strat of keeping the pressure on the duo lane as much as he can as he tries to come back from base. Bad news is, though, there's nothing really up for them to invade, and Emilito will get most of his farm under that tier 1 tower. But look at those 3 members of Valkyries spamming that camp as hard as they can to secure it. Bad news bears, though. Zero's arrived. So should I say Julio arrived, and Zero's felt it. A bead and a shield again. There's going to be better trust between those two, in my opinion, about positioning or communication, because it's either Raph is either doing it and not communicating, or Zero's isn't trusting enough in his teammate.
Yeah, that's about the 3rd time this game we've seen Stone Shield and Beads come out at the same time. Now Raffer caught out and likely life forfeit.
But you saw the Cataclysm straight away. Nice use of the ball from Zeros there too, just to get it across. But Ducky in this fray will not survive long enough to get to the Somersault Cloud. And Emilito coming in, juggled into the air. He needs some help for a portal to escape. Has to be to run away himself there. Meanwhile, Raffer trying to keep him up, but now Emilito's forced into his ult. And he will surely die here as now Panitom still chasing onto Raffer on the backside. All the while, Johnny just trying to farm for the most part in this, but look at how Leviathans are starting to run away with this game.
Yeah, Leviathans start that rotation because they're trying to find maybe a little bit of a pick or force someone out before this Oni Fury starts to spawn up, but instead, the fight goes a little bit better than I think even they expected, so they're able to chase it out all the way into the tier 2 tower and take a peek at the left-hand side. Yarkor getting aggressive on the Zeros inside his own base.
Yeah, but Yarkor's doing his own. Why is he this far forward? This is overconfidence from the lad, and this could be punished heavily. Petrify did not really connect there at all. Good shield, even if it was needed from Rafa. But now no follow-up. Zeros wasn't confident about going in. I think the main thing is they're kind of a little bit worried there, I would say, about what they could do in terms of follow-up, or if there was a trap being set by Leviathans.
It looked more like a little bit of a DC from Johnny to me. That kill was about as easy to get as it could have been, but he was walking into that wall, Hindu.
Unfortunately. Quick pause, though, coming out between the two. At the moment, as soon as we get back in game, we'll be into it. Going as expected, though. Honestly, with how the season went for the first 2 teams in Phase 1, the Valkyries have struggled all year. They've struggled with ping, they've struggled with communication, And meanwhile, Leviathans, they were just off the top, in my opinion. They're just falling at the final moments.
Yeah, just maybe a little bit of chokes at lands occasionally, maybe a little bit of lacking adaptation, but certainly in the regular phases, the Leviathans are a team to be reckoned with. But it's still, again, not all doom and gloom for the Valkyries. I think that this draft can really work with the style of play that they're going for if they're able to make it to that 25-minute mark. And that is a big if when you're already playing into a deficit like we have been.
Well, while we're waiting on this pause, we have a little look back at some of those kills that happened in the game too, and you should be able to see on your screens right about now a bit of a play going on here with Wrong You being aggressive. This was that pick on Ducky.
Rest in peace, Ducky. That's a tough situation. He tried to utilize that Sun Wukong dive that I was singing the praises of, and kind of pays the iron price.
Is there something that Valkyries could have done in terms of their composition to give them a bit more early game against this comp? Because like we were saying about how late game focused it is, where would you expect the change to be to try and give them a moment to defend their own buffs?
Well, that's a nuanced question. Obviously, you could say replace this Geb with just about any other Guardian, and their early game is going to get a lot better, but that would immediately remove the identity of this draft. This draft, I think, once we get to that late game teamfight phase, isn't about initiation, isn't about counter initiation either. It's about splitting up the engagement. The Valkyries actually have a very good core of dive between the Set and Sun Wukong, so if they can separate the fight, close gap onto Shinto, force the Leviathans to peel back, try and make sure Shinto's able to get out alive, then that just creates so much space for their carries to operate in their own backline. That's the goal for them, but easier said than done.
I was going to say, I like the idea of trying to get Raijin away from you, keep Shinto at bay, but when he's Thunder Crashing in, how do you get him out? I don't know, that's going to be the case. There is going to be a bit of a longer pause. I'm sorry as this is taking a bit longer than expected. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we're back, we'll bring you all the rest of the action from Game 1. And welcome back to the SPL and the crab wave music all day long. Apologies for the delays. We should be going back in game any moment now.
We're in the game, Hindu.
You see that?
Yeah, you can turn around. It's on the screen already.
Amazing. Thanks for letting me know. Your eyes in the back of your head. How did you know the screen was live?
Production actually talks to us, and they told us.
Production talks to you?
Sometimes.
They have cut me off so much. They just don't listen to me anymore. Back to the game, though. Leviathans up 5-0. Yes, Johnny did DC there, unfortunately. And yes, it does mean there was a bit of a chance of escape for Yorkor, who was, let's be honest, way too deep.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing up there. He was being BM. He tried to catch zeros on the way out of Phoenix. That's a little toxic,
it definitely
but
felt like,
work.
boys, you guys are having fun, and I've just sat in lane and thought, wait, I am going to do something this game. And if I die, it doesn't matter, because everybody else on my team is monstrously ahead at the moment. Transcendence, though, online for Johnny, fully stacked up. Jotuns as well. And I'm starting to look at the builds coming through from Valkyries towards the middle game, especially as we start moving towards late because of the speed of the game so far as well and the farming situation. Leveling up has been pretty solid for both teams. I do think Zeros is behind in mid, obviously at the moment, not a whole ton of damage, but look at this. Leviathans trying to capitalize on the situation and will get themselves an Oni Fury here, which will put some pressure on the map. Solo lane's towers are already dead. I'm just wondering what they can really do with this Oni wave other than take the free farm and experience.
They can maybe use it to split the maps, show presence once the Valhalla Valkyries have to step up and defend it, and go to the Pyromancer. We're at that magic fire giant time as well, where really the Leviathans with a nearly 8,000 gold lead can feel pretty confident stepping up to it. The Valhalla Valkyries have shown a propensity to not defend the neutral objectives right now, and that's where this gold lead has come from. I don't think they could do the same thing with the Fire Giant, though. With their plan being waiting for that late-game teamfight phase, this Fire Giant would expedite the match so much that I think the Leviathans could legitimately end with the lead that they have.
Just a Pridwin picked up by Panitum there on that left-hand side. Did end up selling that magical defense, as you were mentioning there earlier on, and has that winged blade too. So really not a stupid amount of damage coming out from the Gilgamesh in fairness. It's a lot more utility-esque focus here.
But that HP inside of the build does make his damage come through a little bit more with that first ability based on your own HP pool rather than the opposition's. Johnny forced to retreat over the wall. Raffer a little bit late with the stone shield, and the Pyromancer is going to go the way of the Leviathans. I don't see any reason for him to stop. They can see Emilito over on the left-hand side of the map, trading out a tier 1 for Fire Giant. Probably not feeling too bad about that.
Fire Giant Pyro? Yeah.
Yeah, Pyro. I'm saying they could go to Fire.
Tier 1 and you're like, that's good? Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I can see why you didn't win many games.
No, I mean, it's good for the team that gets the Fire Giant, Hindu.
Oh, okay, good. Qualify the statement.
You're right, you're right. Gotta,
come on.
For the animals in chat.
It's not like a year and a bit?
A little bit over. Some change.
See, but we're in studio now, so it's all different.
It is.
You know, you actually got to work. You don't have to sit at home and pretend to be cast in the game.
Yeah, now I'm not just playing Smite in the background. Instead, I have to give my full attention to the match itself. Zero's eating a little stun from Wrong Yu over the wall.
Hey,
and
don't say my job.
Johnny trying to get his way into there. I'm priming you. If the fight erupted, obviously I would have got out of there.
Oh.
But I didn't want to give it back to you and overwork you if a fight isn't going to happen, and it fizzled this time.
Overwork. Get out. Not in this one, anyway. Big grouping in the mid lane from Leviathans, though. Starting to see the rotation coming in from Yorkor as well, as they're trying to pinch the Zeros back even more, and they're starting to realize here, Leviathans, they can probably take fights when they want to and on their terms, and it's looking like they're going to do just that. Force Johnny back, hit Zeros, and force his beads.
And now he's forced to use the Aegis as well. Stonewall does peel off a little bit of that damage, but Shinto clearly showing that it's not enough. Level 14 Geb cannot dissuade the damage output of the Leviathans. But you were right earlier on, Hindu. Raph doesn't go for the boots at all. He is practicing for the next patch.
Maybe he's got Sprint too. I mean, obviously, you know, you got Wingblade, you got Relic Dagger as well. They're both movement speed, right? So, in theory, next patch, this is a great build.
Great defense, good utility.
However, no.
I don't hate it. If you're slated for the late game, I mean, they haven't taken a fight around this Geb yet. You don't need the boots.
Okay. Hopefully, he's never out of position for a shield that he could have been in position for by just walking there with boots. Ducky out of position with boots right now, very deep in the jungle. Trying to get a bit of a window there for Emilito is what he's doing, just to be clear. He's trying to give a bit of separation, give some vision to his teammate to keep pushing for that tier 2 on the left-hand side. But Leviathans came there in force, and now Ducky will be trapped, just trying to buy as much time as he can for the rest of his team to farm.
Yeah, Yorkor makes the easiest rotation of his life over there. Ducky buys some time, to be sure, inside the Shadow Realm for the next 50 seconds. That is a great opportunity for the Order team to go ahead and walk their way over to the Fire Giant. Seems like that is the call once Yorkor rejoins the core 2 that are already there. Tough defense for the Valkyries, man. They might have to let this one go if Ducky's dead.
Well, you got space and time available for Giannis, and you're hoping for a dream here at the moment. The amount of damage that Zeros has on this so far, though, not the massive amount of power you were hoping for. Panitom taking a trade with Johnny in the jungle. Johnny pins into the wall, has to use his beats. Shinto up in the air, and Johnny does connect. Space and Time fired through, but it didn't really find a home as Johnny's still under pressure and has no further backup available. Emelito and Raph on the right-hand side, and Zero still in mid. Leviathans to get 2 kills for 1.
Hey, that's a good trade for the Valhalla Valkyries. No longer goose egg across the top. First kill, 22 minutes in. That's a little bit of over-aggression again from the Leviathans, though. Shinto was frontlining on this Ryze and maybe trying to let Yarkor know he's not the only one who can just step up wherever he wants.
I do feel like it's at this point it's already you need to see Leviathans make 2 big mistakes.
Like team-wide mistakes.
Yeah, like lose 2 or 3 members, give up the Fire Giant maybe, and then you've got a window for Valkyries to start climbing back in. Because at the moment, it doesn't look like Valkyries have anything in the tank at the moment. It's very much defensive. It's very much continue to farm and hold on. And it's kind of been that way since, well, the first rotation of buffs in the dual life.
It has been, but we haven't seen the Valhalla Valkyries utilize this composition yet. This stone wall, or stone shield rather, has only been used reactively. If they use it aggressively for Johnny, allow him to jump in, give him the stone shield, a little bit additional HP, has the Blood Forge in the build as well, can stick around in these engagements for an incredibly long time if he finds a kill. It just hasn't come up yet.
You want to know an interesting fact?
What's that?
I have 5 stars on Geb now.
That's a lot.
And I did not know it's called Stone Shield. True story.
This god came out in 2011?
You know why? Because why do I need to say Stone Shield when I can just say
shield? You're right.
You know, I'm lazy. I'm English. We make up the language as we go. Emelito gets hit by the Petrify there. Doesn't have a relic available. Did use a beads, funny enough, there at the tail end of that. A bit concerned about the slow that would impact him as well. Gold Fury, though, taken by Leviathans on cooldown on this left-hand side. You can see Johnny just continuing to push out right and keep the pressure mounting. But look at Julio all the while, just pressure in the middle area the whole time, keeping Zeros out of the fray and out of position to really keep an eye on what's going on with those objectives and cause a problem. Just look at how tanky he is, too.
Yeah, he can do literally no wrong on the map right now. Zero steps a little bit too far forward. Raph caught out.
And he takes a ton of damage too. Doesn't have his shield available. Just use it on Zeros meanwhile. And now he uses the Cataclysm, but immune for the most part. Shinto will not land that last drum though to secure the kill. Meanwhile, Jocko at the back has to use his Aegis on Ducky. Johnny tries to follow up.
Goodness.
Wrong you to the rescue again. What a support play that was as Julio in the back line with Shinto, giving Shinto the double kill. Let's make this a triple. Cancel that. Panitom's a feat. And Shinto gets that. This could be a quadra. Could have been a penta, maybe not. Yarkor gets 1, and that is a deicide 5-0 in favor of Leviathans. And you know what? They might not even need FG here.
No, they've got the minion wave with them, and they've got, what, 30 seconds left on the nearest respawn, and that's Raffer on this Geb. Level 15 Geb, I'm not thinking it's going to put up much of a defense here. Look, they got ran over this time around. The Valhalla Valkyries slated themselves for a more late-game, slower-paced match, and the Leviathans did not give it to them.
And that's the one thing when you look at picks and bans every single time between 2 teams, Mifflin. We know, the fans know at home which team is more early-game focused or late-game focused. The teams do too. So when Leviathans get in that game and they go, okay, they've gone for a late game, we've just got to put the hammer to the metal early, they did exactly that.
They did. In particular, Julio's rotations were crippling throughout this match. I mean, level 8, he's in mid, burning off beads from Zeros. He's going to the gold for, he's making these rotations very impactful for his team. And once they were already deathballing at, what, level 5, really, there wasn't much of an opportunity for the Valkyries to farm. That Geb, just a little bit too slow for my liking.
Well, no boots. That's what happens to you. That's the end of game 1. We're going to go into game 2 momentarily. We'll find out if Valkyries can bounce back.
There's no need to complicate things. Let's stick to the basics. We both know what we want. Let's just keep it simple. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We dance on the same wavelength. This feels like a new beginning. We both know what we want. Let's just keep it simple. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So won't you let me trip with you? Leaning and follow
Welcome to my world. 오랜만이 나로 반겨 말아 걸어 내게 맡겨 결국 모든 것이 바꾸야. 해가 뜨고 눈을 감아 엉켜버린 사이코 같은 패턴에 눈이 돌아 몇 년 동안 사이코. 네가 잠이 들 땐 너와 함께 하고 싶어. 미쳐버린 내가 과연 너를 이해되나 싶어. 밤만 되면 이러는 게 병인가로 싶어. 하지만 다시 밤이 찾아오면 나 I got that fire, I got that juice.
Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome back here to, well, what will be Game 2, eventually, of the Valkyries versus the Leviathans. Game 1, though, well, didn't quite go the way the Valkyries would have wanted. Maybe they can bounce back here in Game 2. Maybe you can bounce back as well by getting some merch to rep your favorite team. I have to say, despite that game, the Valkyries do have one of my favorite articles on this, which is the onesie over there. Your King expletive deleted shirt as well up there. I have to censor myself because I think I would get yelled at. Get bugged, your Stay Salty shirts, your Titans shorts, your Let's Jam Jade Dragons compression sleeve, the hooded blanket. It took me a while to figure out what that was. I thought it was a gator at first, but the hooded blanket for the Leviathans. Yeah, it makes you feel real comfortable.
You never had the classic Snuggie?
I don't know that I ever actually owned a Snuggie.
Well, Leviathans, they're looking awfully comfortable with how much they were dominating in Game 1, Gore. Yeah. So they might be actually rocking those Snuggies without us even knowing.
You know what? I bet it is summer and it's Atlanta. Probably not in the post-game interview. I was hoping they'd have one around them, but there's no reason to. It's too warm for that. But I think all of that, first off, shop.smiteproleague.com, as well as the fact that everything that you buy that is for the teams goes straight to the teams in terms of funding. So you're going to be able to not only rep your favorite team, but support your favorite team. And right now, the Valkyries need that support. The Leviathans are screaming it. I think I saw some people on Twitter. They already have everything going for them. That one was a solid win, is the way I'll describe it.
I don't think it's so much about the fan base for the Valkyries as much as it is they're just not doing themselves any favors, quite frankly, in Gore, because I understand the premise of the composition. It's a solid draft that can definitely work, albeit it has a decent amount of high execution behind it. But again, when you have players that are as experienced as the majority of this Valhalla Valkyries roster is, you just don't really expect things like players such as Raffer, for example, opting to just say, hey, we have no boots in a week, so why not just ignore one of the best featured items for tanks currently in the game? And his lack of picking up those reinforced greaves, it's just a little baffling. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Valkyries don't want to win, Gore, because that's just an outright lie. Every single team that's represented in this SMITE Pro League wants to win. But seeing some of the mistakes that are made by the Valkyries, it's just kind of amateur, and that's not what you would expect from a roster that has former world champions on it.
Like you said, just kind of feels like they're preparing themselves for mid-season, but before mid-season, so there's not, like, everyone else. I mean, the Leviathans, I should say, have had one strategy, and they've only ever had one strategy. They'll admit it openly, and that is, we are going to pick the meta picks. And that's it. Like, they don't go any deeper than that. You ask them about it, they go, yeah. So we know that this is a really good pick, and we lock it in because of that, and that's about it. And so you can ban some things away from them, like we saw last time, the Emoja, the Ymir, the Tiamat, kind of stripped away. But they still got so many good things on their side they didn't have to worry about. And, I mean, they got away as well, banning things like the Neath, the Alkwang, the Loki, like things, admittedly, that the Valkyries have looked good with, but no other team, like, if you ban those three, they're going to run away with a good draft.
And we can call out the gorilla in the room as well. Johnny, he didn't get the pick that he wanted for, but I think that just falls apart more so from just too much early engagement. Leviathans were just punishing nonstop, and I'd imagine they're going to be looking to run back that same strat for Game 2.
We'll have to see how exactly they can adjust it. The Leviathans, again, everything's on paper. Look at a tier list. There's their draft order. We'll have to see if they can get any of those. Gilgamesh made it through last time. Do you expect that to change up, especially now that the things have swapped? Like, the Valkyries admittedly want to let it through this time around.
The problem that the Valkyries are encountering right now, Gore, is that it's not even necessarily one pick specifically that's giving them issues. It's just an outright team fight difference. And the Leviathans are just running it down. They played the early buff pressure invade that we were hoping for with the kind of composition that they had opted for. And Valkyries, they could potentially look to try and take that Gilgamesh pick away because it does introduce a decent amount of flexibility. That was one of the main highlights that we saw from the Leviathans Leviathans, when they went for that Gilga first pick, it just made their draft relatively open-ended as far as which direction they wanted to see it through with. I like the adjustment, though, from the Valkyries to take out the Raijin. However, this does potentially leave Tiamat in play should the Leviathans they might skip banning Tiamat, and they might just say, you know what, Zeros, have it. Because Leviathans, again, they understand we want to run it down in the early to mid game, and Tiamat is, one more time, just a god that is a little bit more preferred to actually hit that mid to late game focus. But if you're losing in like 16 minutes, it doesn't matter if you have a Tiamat on your side. She's not going to be able to buy time.
And I don't want to throw them under the bus too hard, but I mean, the Valkyries, they were one of the first, I actually think the first team to play the Tiamat and to lock her in when she was first available. And they were the first team to lose with Tiamat, and then they lost with her twice, and they haven't really gotten her since. Granted, I think a lot of people, especially Zeros, have kind of come to understand more of where she sits in the meta since then, but it's not necessarily been the heavy hitter for the Valkyries as it has been for some of these other teams. Maybe that has changed, because it's been quite a while since we've gotten to see Zeros pilot that one. But something that hasn't changed is how good your core is, or hardcore is, on this Chiron, and as we just saw, how good Banatom's going to be on this Gilgamesh.
And Leviathans, they waste no time scooping up both the Chiron and the Gilgamesh core. And one more time, just a lot of early game focus seems to be a reoccurring theme here for the Leviathans. Granted, Valkyries do have a chance to respond, and I don't think it's a necessity for them to look for a hunter pick for Emilito this early on. You already know that it's going to be the Chiron, so there isn't really anything that I don't think Emil couldn't play, despite the ping disparities. I do think that he is a solid enough hunter that he can work through that. But the Wukong, for me, in terms of Ducky's presence in Game 1, there just was never really any features there. And I think it would be nice to see Ducky have a pick that could be a little bit more aggressive against that of the tier. I mean, King Arthur's still up on the board here. Colin still available. We saw those being some of the heavy priority picks even during that playoffs portion. So if the Valkyries forego grabbing their solo laner now, they might regret it, because that could put Leviathans into a little bit of a leverage, because they could look for the King Arthur. They could look for the Kakolin if they wanted to, or they could even try to just run it back with the tier and just look to focus around those knockups for the crowd control.
Well, they were bouncing around. Pick of the litter for the supports. The only two taken off are the Ymir, the Umoja that they had banned out earlier. And they go for the Khepri, of all things. Again, something that is very Raffer. Maybe not exactly what you expected. They hovered that Fafnir for a little bit there, so maybe thinking about trying to bring that through, especially because we've seen several times Chiron plus Soul maybe even going through and having like the double hunter style that comes through. Now Merlin, maybe it doesn't necessarily synergize as well with something like a Fafnir, but he still seems like a good pickup into this. And Merlin has been so kind to Shinto, but they do get this King Arthur. You had mentioned the Wukong. They do the big pivot over now to pick up a much stronger solo laner for Ducky, and it feels like those, at least side lanes, have some core to them.
Would like to see a Fafnir ban here, though, for the Valkyries. The fact that Raffer was even hovering it shows that they recognize the kind of issues they ran into with Rongyu on the Fafnir. He was very consistent at landing almost all of his stun lock CC chains, and that posed so many issues for Johnny. He was never really able to get up and running, even when it looked like it was going to be a great fight for him on that set. He just fell through because he was just constantly getting stun locked, and it's very problematic when you're dealing with the likes of a Fafnir. So Valkyries making the right decision here, taking that Fafnir away, taking Julio off the tier as well. I'd imagine that Kakolin would probably be his next best bet. However, there are still a lot of strong options left open for solo. Julio kind of can just go whatever direction he wants. It's the Merlin that I'm keeping an eye out for, because the thing about Khepri Gore, he's great at negating single target focus, but there is enough AoE presence right now from this Leviathan squad that I'm not sure Khepri's going to be able to accomplish exactly what the Valkyries are intending.
I mean, the good news is that he doesn't have any executes so far, right? So there's nothing to stress about, at least on that side of things, but there are a lot of other worries. This is someone we saw banned out last time around. Very popular pick lately for facing against a Chiron has been the Stanza Burrow. With Khepri, ideally some of the reses come through, but like you said, maybe not the easiest time getting that done. They go Danza, Tsukiyomi. I mean, you cover up admittedly the Khepri, and they've got 4 of the top picks in Smite. You show the Khepri and you tell me that Raffer's playing it, and I think, okay, yeah, they've got 5 out of 5 top picks for the Valkyries here. This is a much stronger draft than what we got to see in Game 1.
For sure. I think it definitely plays a little bit more into the Valkyrie strengths, or at least it gives them a lot more opportunities to try and actually answer to a lot of those early game buff invades that we were seeing from the Leviathans. They were stressing so much pressure into that jungle early on, Gore, and even though I like the Tsukiyumi, I like the Tiamat, I'm still kind of in the gray area here as far as how well they're actually going to fare, because Tsukiyumi, a little bit of limited mobility. Even when he gets that ultimate online, he does have the dive potential introduced for Shinto on the Merlin, but Kakolin, Cerberus, Gilgamesh, that is a lot of force off from the carries, and it could be hard for the Valkyries to actually collapse, because Khepri is great for disengaging, but I'm not really all that sold on his initiation. The lack of crowd control right now from the Valkyries could be what winds them down 2-0 here to the Leviathans.
And the thing I think that's really interesting, because you look at it and everything you just said kind of plays immediately into this, which is that their draft, I mean, they could get the best picks in role for everything. A lot of what was going wrong for them last game, it didn't matter of the draft. It was independent of it, because it was all in their playstyle, their positioning, where they were trying to fight. And you change up things, you grab the Merlin, Kakulin, the Cerberus here if you're the Leviathans, but admittedly, if the Leviathans just play the same game twice, they don't have to worry about anything.
In all honesty, Gore, if Raffer just builds reinforced Greaves, he probably avoids a lot of the spots where he was encountering some issues, though, because they make a huge difference. Having that little bit of crowd control, the CSR reduction is massive, especially when you're dealing with a team that has already made it beyond clear that all they want to do is punish you in the early to mid.
And I think the other big distinction, right, because we were talking about it a lot, like practice for next week when boots are gone, but next week, the difference is that as you level up, you will get that movement speed inherently. Right now, you still have to build items.
Yes.
Like he had to weigh in on movement speed items to just try and match that. And so that's definitely something that you could feel kind of causing a lot of pressure for him. I admire him for trying it. It was definitely a different build, akin to the tier build, I guess, that we're used to seeing out of solo.
It might be great, not gonna lie. Whenever that boost change actually does come through, I don't think you can really go wrong with having a Thieves Wingblade Relic Dagger, but as it currently stands, we are not on that patch, Gore, and so it just... Reinforced Greaves are probably one of the primary woes that I have even heard from the pros throughout all of Season 8, so for him to, like, not be interested in building that item, it's just kind of a head-scratcher, really.
But especially when, I mean, now, again, Khepri, new slate, everything comes through.
Yes.
I honestly think his Khepri is really solid. There have been games that Raffer, at least last year, and I believe maybe earlier this year, like, had won because of saves he can make on this pick. But you're going in lane up against now this Cerberus and this Chiron. It just feels like a lot of early game control that is going to be shifted in favor of the Leviathans, and they're already a team, at least a dual lane, that I don't want to have any amount of lead.
And I guess another concern here with the Khepri is that while that revival potential is awesome, and even the CC cleanse, you have to remember that whenever Khepri throws up his ultimate, it does in fact cleanse you of all crowd control that is currently on you, as well as providing that additional movement speed. So that could be an interesting feature for the Leviathans to try and deal with, because it is going to force the Leviathans at least to be a little bit more considerate in terms of how much follow-up they're willing to actually dump for their initiation.
Well, hey, you know what? There's one thing I've learned this year. It is that it wouldn't be a Valkyrie set without them trying to make sure that they're getting absolutely the best server they can. They're doing a remake right now, guys, just to make sure that everything is smooth for both teams involved in this one. So we're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back with game number 2. Welcome back, everyone, as we come into the final phase of these picks and bans. Again, they're locking in all of their picks to make sure they get into the second game on a clean server, feel real good, and let the Valkyries have a good fighting chance up against the Leviathans. But Taco, as we were kind of talking about prior to the break, there's not a lot that's going for them, at least in terms of the draft.
No, I mean, it's not that, Gore. There's definitely win conditions that are involved here. It's more so the concern about how well the Valkyries are going to be able to actually delay this game to that segment where their composition really takes off. And again, that's just a little bit more of that mid to late game aspect. But as we saw in game number 1, the Leviathans, they got off to a great start early on, and even though there was a little bit of an unfortunate drop kill there from the Valkyries for reasons completely out of their control, it's still the more or less the same results in my mind, because there was still so much map pressure and control coming from everywhere else. I don't think with the way that Johnny was being kind of manhandled in a lot of those engagements, the poor guy never had a chance to do anything. He got to go in, and that was it. Leviathans just instantly swarmed him. And when you have that level of a response towards your jungler, towards one of their main creators for those initiations, it's just not going to go well for you. There's nothing left for the rest of the team to really follow up on, because there was so much pressure being applied to that set to be that star factor that finds the early pick in a fight so that the rest of the engagement could go smoothly for the Valkyries. It's a little bit better, I think, with the Tsukuyumi here for him. I do like the Tsukuyumi here just because he does have a little bit more of that backline die potential, might be able to at least get into the mix a little bit faster. And with that, Khepri could have a pocket survival aspect that is, I think, a good take for the Valkyries, but it's really just about the early game pressure and how well they're able to deal with the buff invades yet again.
You're definitely going to be diving deep. They're definitely going to turn to put a lot of pressure on you. But this time we can get you out alive, or at least we can cross our fingers and hope that it goes through. There's no executes to try and stop it this time around. We'll see if this change up from the Valkyries is going to be good enough to get them game number 2, or the Leviathans can close this out 2-0. Let's go down to Hindu and Mifflin and find out.
So much Gore and Taco on the desk. Yes, game 2 is now underway once again. Apologies for the technical difficulties, just getting these players all comfortable as best they can. But into game we go, Myth, and in fairness, I do prefer Valkyrie's draft this time round.
I like their draft this time around as well, but they lost out in the early game, game 1, and now here in game 2, the Leviathans come away with a very strong early game draft. I mean, I don't want to play against Chiron full stop, especially Chiron and Cerberus together. Gilgamesh had a fantastic showing in the early game last time around. Zeros was not allowed to operate, and on Tiamat in the early game, not nearly as safe on that as he was on that Yanis. So I think the Valhalla Valkyries have definitely got their work cut out for him here.
Well, I expect to see maybe a bit more of a focus towards Zeros again this game with this pickup. So if that's the case, what do you do as Valkyries to try and deal with that? If you're Johnny, are you trying to counteract that by being there too? Or are you trying to look for somewhere else to put pressure?
I think there's a couple of ways you can try and deal with it. You can have Johnny try and emphasize the side lanes a little bit more to try and drag away that aggression from the Leviathans. Or we can have Rapper buy boots early and rotate early as well.
Good fight here in the dual lane, and Yorkor took a ton of poke damage there. Wrong, you're going to go to spit off on Emilito just at the start of that taunt going through there, which kind of slowed down the burst potential onto Yorkor. Early game, though, bit of pressure for the Valkyries here. They do, at level 1, have a bit better of a wave clear, I would say, between the two of them. Mainly because, well, one thing about Khepri, because of that rolling blessing that he puts out, if it does tag a god, the minion aggro will hit you still because of the dot damage, and it reduces your minions attacking the enemy minions.
Not just that, if you hit your own minions with that ability, it gives him additional defense as well. So he's got really good tools to make sure that the waves go his way.
I'm only 1 star on Khepri. It's not the same as Geb, unfortunately.
That's interesting. Why so much fixation on Geb?
I don't know. I love the shields. I love saying no to people. Right?
Scarab's Blessing is the ultimate no.
Playing Geb is just no. No. And no, it's not, it would be, Scarab's Blessing would be the ultimate no if it wasn't for executes in the game.
You're right. That's fair enough. And, well, luckily no executes this time around, as the desk already highlighted. So we're probably going to see a couple of key Scarab's Blessings come through here. I'm expecting it. Likely going to be, on the majority of the time, focused on his zeros. He's going to be the recipient of a lot of the dive, so a lot of the ultimates as well.
Speaking of key players, though, Johnny's been a lot of focus from this Valkyries team coming into the start of the year. The European jungler that's been touted as the next coming of adapting to an extent is the best way I can put it, because a lot of people do think he's got the potential, and so far, if I'm fair to how he's played so far in the Pro League, he's been pretty decent. He's struggled with the ping situation, sure, but he has stood out that he has the potential to go toe-to-toe. Speaking of toe-to-toe,
up, down.
Zero's in a bit of trouble here. Going to trade out nicely there, though, turning into that melee form, but now Panitom going to reinitiate again, and now Zero's could have bit off more than he can chew. He does have a health potion or 2 available, so will not be looking to go back to base. But you can see he's been left on an island. Panitom just won't leave him alone.
It's just like Game 1. Panitom is beefing with zeros if you're going to go by the gameplay itself. But right there, it's all just about this, making sure that that first red buff invade goes their way. Rongyu, on the purple buff alone, is able to strip away the small camps, but thinks better of sticking around himself. Yarkor, though, all the way back at his own.
This is no win on Valhalla Valkyrie side so far, because on the right side of the map, Johnny and Ducky invaded blue buff, and Johnny just went and stole the speed buff away from Panitom. So across the map, technically, Valkyries are coming out on top so far, as Panitom's going to meet Johnny in the jungle.
He will. Johnny now on the retreat, and that's all he's got to do. Panitom doesn't have a speed buff. Can't just keep up. Johnny playing very well around that early aggression around mid. That's what we were talking about earlier. If he just allocates a little bit more resources to the side lanes, it at least makes it a little bit less worth it for Panitom to spend legitimately a minute and a half bullying zeros.
Exactly, but he did get the beads out of zeros too, so even more defense needed from zeros in this early game, a little bit more marginal about his positioning. I do expect the red buff to be invaded again. Will we see Valkyries look to defend this next red buff, though? Will they send maybe the Capri over too for the revive and the CC that he's going to bring? Or do they just leave Zeros to just hold as best he can in this mid lane?
I think it all depends on what Johnny elects to do, whether or not he gets that piercing moonlight online and whether or not he wants to be a part of that engagement early on. There is, again, the opportunity for him to just head on over to the speed buff and try and match that invade pressure. So I'm going to be very excited to see how the Valkyries approach this one. With the draft that they have, I think it's pretty similar to Game 1 in that they should be conflict adverse early game, so I wouldn't be overly surprised if they're willing to give up their red buff.
Did just hear the cavalry the charge, I should say, from Yarkor use his escape ability, just what it's called, giddy up really, just to give that extra bit of passive, that regeneration towards Rongyu in this lane. Bit of an undersight there on the amount of regen that these two will have in lane just because of how Cerberus functions too. If anyone is regenning, he'll steal a little bit of that for himself too. And Yarkor does the same, but look at Rocket Man. He's on the way. Rongyu read it like a book and blinked away. Yarkor going to use his ult and just cancel straight away to reset to safety because they know Johnny was hunting. Rafa going to go in though, on towards Rongyu, still under the tower. No dive there with the moonlight from Johnny. Danger averted. It did cost him a blink and both ultimates, or just one.
But all that pressure that is afforded to the Valkyries there keeps their red buff alive, forces them to at least able to pick up their own buff, and it looks like Zeros is going to be able to solo it out this time around, which is going to be a huge boon for them. Harken back to Game 1, I mean, Zeros didn't get a red buff until like the 12-minute mark, so this is already a much better start.
And if you see where you see Panitom on the map now, he just did the blue into the speed buff on that right-hand side. So I think he realized last time he invaded for that red buff, sure, he got some pressure onto Zeros, put Zeros a little bit behind. However, the rest of the map they were losing. They were technically losing a bit of the jungle farm of their own and their own solo buff as well. Causes more problems for them. So this time round, better safe to farm your own jungle first.
Yeah, there's no better way to stop a jungler from invading you than taking their speed buff. That is a huge hit to the mental. I mean, as a jungler myself, it just makes you shut down.
Does that happen a lot to you? Did that happen a lot to you?
I mean, more often than I'd like to admit.
Yeah, I've seen a few games. Johnny under a bit of Julia under a bit of pressure, but Johnny coming in to try and keep this pressure rolling. Moonlight is available if needed. Could deal with a good route and cancel out straight away, but he's buying time for Panitom to get in here. Should be a 1-for-1, could even be a 2-for-1, but he missed a drop kick, and that just means he's got to use an extra ability there to bring down Ducky. Can't chase on towards Johnny. 1-for-1 in the solo lane. Myth, does anyone really come out on top in that one?
I gotta think that the Valkyries are feeling pretty good about it. Leviathans have a very strong early game draft, so they're looking to find everything that they can here. So trades at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say favor the Valkyries. Once we get to the late game, that's where their draft works. So any step that they could take to make sure they're getting even a little bit closer to that 20-25 minute mark feels pretty good for them.
I will say, as a Khepri player too, it's going to be kind of easy to find the right sort of targets to ult onto this game, just because it's not a whole ton of burst damage coming from the Leviathans. It's more sustained for my liking. Very telegraphed in terms of the damage coming through, so you can time those ultimates effective in these engagements. I guess the question is like, how quickly can you get it off at the right time, and how can Leviathans be patient about securing the kill?
Yeah, the Leviathans draft is so good, not only at doing dot damage or consistent damage, but their objective burn is pretty ridiculous as well. Panatom and Yarkor, with Julio, once he's in that transformation state as well, going to be able to burn through Gold Furies and Fire Giants, and that's ignoring Shinto on this Merlin, and really you can't.
Well, one thing to mention as well, you did just mention the Kukulkan there. Well, Kukulkan drafted after the counterban phase, didn't get banned, didn't get picked to the counterban phase. That's surprising to me. Guess it just shows how much he's fallen with the sort of changes that's happened, the nerfs towards him and King Arthur. A lot of people saying it wasn't enough for King Arthur, however, and he's still being relevant so far.
I'm not even sure that it's that Kukulkan has fallen here so much as it is Julio in the past has shown a huge propensity to go towards gods like Tyr or even occasionally the Sun Wukong. So the Valkyries may be thinking to themselves, maybe we don't have to ban it. We could just play against that Tyr again. But instead, Julio flexing that god pool a little bit here in game 2.
Yeah, in fairness as well, when you think about the difference between Kukulkan versus a Tyr, your beads aren't going to be burnt as often against a Kukulkan as they would be against a Tyr in engagements. So maybe that's one of the thought processes there. Zero's trying to creep into this pit here and try to strip away one of those oracles if possible, preventing free vision for the Leviathans. And those left-hand Harpies will... I'm excited to see how they play out as this season goes on now, because of the change next week, right? Because the Vines are going away too, which is a small thing. Blinking from Rapper, abducts onto Paniton. Whoa! Great burst damage from Zeros in this 2v3. Rapper will have to ult himself. Will there be a further follow-up from the Leviathans? Rongyu's looking for a blink, it feels like, there, the way he's positioning himself. And he will go in and pick up Rapper, drag him back towards the team. Zeros goes in though, looking at Paniton. Ducky racking around the back as well. Johnny gets hold of one, make that 2 as Rongyu falls. And that was all at the same time as Julio had based. Great rotation in from Ducky.
Massive play for the Valkyries there to able to turn that one around. Raffer, I think, gets away by the skin of his teeth, essentially, would have fallen very early on had we just seen Rongyu stick around to follow up off of the Scarab's Blessing itself instead of trying to reset for the blink. It kind of telegraphs it a little bit, and then the response was certainly there. It gave time for the Abduct to come back up so he can get out of Winds of Shamash. Yeah. So maybe just slight timing delineations is what cost the Leviathans that fight.
I think the big key word you were really saying there to me is the delay more than anything else, right? Like just waiting, trying to get a bit more than he was hoping for, not just the initial pick onto him, maybe get a beads out of one of the other two. Would have been more impactful, but Valhalla Valkyries here do find themselves in a comfortable position, I would say. They have a slight lead at the moment and doing a much better situation than game 1.
They are 2-level lead in the jungle for Johnny, who has got all of the kills for his team so far, so experience and gold starting to lean their way towards the Order side. But for now, it's not enough to really feel confident to start looking at these neutral objectives. It's still not enough to dissuade the Leviathans from utilizing this early game draft. Maybe it puts a little bit of fear in them, saying that you got to choose your fights a little bit better, but I think that the Leviathans draft at this point in the game is so much stronger just by and large that they don't have to worry too much about the golden XP right now.
Interesting to see again, Raffer's not going with the bootstrap whatsoever. I do like the fact we're just about to end boots, and just before it happens we get one more meme of Khepri no boots, Geb no boots, rather than just Rat for a moment or two. I'm not 100% sold on it though. Like, I think obviously long run, we know next week it's all going to change. But that's 18% movement speed that you are missing out on.
Not just 18% movement speed, but had he gone for the reinforced greaves, a little bit of CCR as well. So maybe a little bit early on deciding to switch up that meta there. Could be cooldown reduction. Probably going to be the tank boots, though, if he did go for it. But instead, he's not going to go for any boots. It's likely going to be Wing Blade right into Relic Dagger yet again.
I think the one thing for the fans at home, more importantly, is what's going to end up happening is if Valkyries do end up winning the series, they're going to be like, I'm trying no boots in support all day. Or it's what was Rafa thinking, having no boots the entire game. That could have cost them. We'll see how it plays out, though, and if he can stay in position. Ducky at level 12. Julio still holding his own, considering couple of engagements on that right-hand side too, where the pressure has been there for the Valkyries. But look at Leviathan stepping forward into the Gold Fury pit. Rongyu with the spit there, looking to try and find a target with a stun. As the Bruise now down, some of the CC wasted by Valkyries, and Leviathans end up getting the Oracles.
I think the Oracles traded out there. No, you're absolutely right. Leviathans able to strip that one away, get themselves some vision. I'll never correct you again, Hindu Man.
No, please do. Please do. It happens a lot. It's fine.
I just think that for now, the Leviathans need to keep up their pressure. They let go of that red buff invade strategy the second they lost that second rotation. So if they could just get back and involved early on, make sure Panatom's getting in these team fights early as well. We haven't seen an impactful wins of Shamash quite yet. Julio hasn't been rotating as proactively as he did in Game 1. Once they start to get their feet under them, that's where the Leviathans are going to hit their pace. But 11.5 minutes in, they've already lost a lot of that crucial time where they're just stronger.
Did see a lot of supports picking up Sunder as of late as well with the current situation, but this game, both the supports opting for the Blink. We saw Rafa utilize it earlier, as did Wrong U. Both of them do have good engages. I would say, argue, obviously, Wrong U's engage a little bit better. But I will say Abduct is a very powerful tool if used in the right situation.
And it's really good with his team composition. A lot of single target CC on the side of the Valhalla Valkyries, so Abduct into stun from Tiamat or take him up to Avalon once Ducky starts to rotate. It makes it very easy to pick your targets, and single target damage kind of the name of the game in this Valkyries draft.
I will say, though, when it comes to team fights, keep an eye on your core on this Chiron because the cleanse could bait Rafa into a bad spot there. If he blinks on in, there's an immediate cleanse coming through from your core, which will do damage to Rafa at the same time. It's still a win-win scenario there. Rafa will have to be aware of that. Wrong U wrapping around the back here. Does spot that ward in the jungle, though, in the sentry, so won't be looking for an initiation just yet. Still, this 3-member core of each team grouping towards the mid lane.
The Valkyries have got such a huge lead inside the jungle itself, so every single fight they take is likely going to be around Johnny, either initiating the fight himself with a piercing moonlight or just trying to poke from a range. But this Tsukiyomi is one of the largest threats on the map right now, and it's due in large part to Panatom's build as well. Picks up the Transcendence in that first slot, very slow rolling item, need to get it fully stacked. Only has about 26 stacks right now. Gonna be a while until his damage output can match what Johnny's doing, or if he decides to shift his build into bruiser items or even full-on tank, Panatom's gonna have a very slow time catching up.
And Panatom just went back to base now. We'll see what he ends up purchasing. Get out of the way, item purchase. He purchased beads. What else did he purchase? He purchased item purchased. He purchased Night Shield. There you go.
It looks like it is going to be a bruiser option.
Honestly,
a
if
little
that
bit of
had come up, I could see it and go, hey, it's that. But he's on his way towards Pridwin again. We saw him do it last game. It seems to be more of a utility item, but you were mentioning it's pretty effective with how his build's going to go, especially with the Transcendence too.
Yeah, it makes up for a little bit of that damage he could have been going for had he decided to go something on the Mace tree or even a little bit towards the Heartseeker tree as well. So I like it. I like this build in general. It's going to give him a lot more survivability. His ability to initiate these fights is going to be a lot stronger as well. But for now, it is still incredibly slow. Doesn't have it finished up. Still needs to stack up that Transcendence, whereas you take a peek at Johnny, his burst is through the roof. Already has the hi-rez Transcendence fully stacked. Now is the time for the Valkyries to start to shift their style. They don't need to wait anymore. Now's the time to try and utilize their lead.
Rafa's a little bit far forward here, in a bit of an awkward spot, I would say, of how far up he is. But Leviathans don't realize he was as alone as he was. Quick pause coming out between the two there. However, and we're going to go to a quick break, or should I say, back to us for the most part. How's it gone so far this game? I do think Valkyries are looking a lot better than Game 1.
They are doing very well. I think that with their draft being late game slated, they've done a very good job of mitigating loss or even pulling a lead throughout this early game. But so far, it still has just felt like a very trepidatious pace. And when the Leviathans get into this mindset where they can wait till the late game team fight themselves, if you can harken back to Season 7, the Sanguine roster, they loved that phase of the game. That's where they really flourish. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. The Valkyries have the draft advantage, but the Leviathans are no stranger to late game fights.
So no surprise, we will be going to a quick break as we wait for one of the players to get back in game. Apologies for the issues, but you know how it is with how this year's been and last year too. After the break, we'll be back with the conclusion of Game 2. Welcome back. Apologies for the delays there. Music, keep going. Oh, okay.
I like that. It was a good vibe.
I was kind of like, hey, can we have some atmosphere as we do this? We're going back into the game momentarily, and as soon as we're in, here we go. And I can turn around and look at the screen again because we're back in. 3-1 for the Valkyries at the moment. Goal differential actually slightly in favor of Leviathans. Oh, very marginal, though.
Yeah, like less than 100, like maybe 30 gold in favor of the Leviathans.
202!
Okay, well, they just cleared a wave.
Okay. You good guess. Good guess.
Good guess? All right, fair enough. Good guess.
Wait, you do math?
Of course, all the time on cast, even though you keep telling me not to.
How much pen has Panatom got?
Oh, God, you're going to make me do that, huh? Not enough. How about that?
That's right.
Don't do math on cast.
0.
Yeah.
That's the right answer. It was a hard question, that one, Myth. Really threw you off there to a loop to look at a Transcendence of Pridwin and go, I guess you got no pen.
Hey, look, you got to take into account the functional penetration you get from getting the additional damage from your HP items. He doesn't have any HP items. All right, well, I was trying to fake my way through a little bit of math there, but instead we'll play it straight. 0 penetration so far from him.
Fake it till you make it. I've been doing it for 8 years, okay? It don't change, just keep faking it. But at the moment, Emilito, level 15, Transcendence RC Online, same build for your core in this duo lane. These bluestones, though, that we've seen quite a lot of in this lane, I do think we're going to see that continue into the next phase and the next update that comes through, but we have seen these bluestones get taken away and sold after the game gets rolling and we get towards late game. What is it about the late game items of the bluestone evolutions that we don't see it for?
It just doesn't synergize too well, but maybe Yarkor takes the fight first.
Yeah, Yarkor under a lot of pressure. He does get hit by a rocket slam to the head, and the abduct from Rapper kept Rongyu out of the fight, and now Rongyu surrounded by 3 on this left-hand side, trying to buy time to see if Panatom wants to come on through, but there's going to be no chance of any range there. Fantastic little work out of Valkyries again in the duo lane.
Yeah, they're just getting the better end of these rotations this time around. The Leviathans completely forgone their strategy of utilizing this early game draft. But to answer your question, Hunters just don't get a lot of value from these bluestone upgrades. Instead, they'd like to go for something like the Odibo or something along those lines.
From Zero, still following up, and that's going to force the wins from Panatom. Under the tier 1 tower, 3 members go, and they will fall back here, Valkyries. However, they're in a great position to start or even just join the rest of their team, already doing the Gold Fury.
Yeah, that's going to burn away absolutely for free. If your entire duo lane is dead, you got to believe that the neutral objective on their side of the map is not going to be long for the world either. But the Leviathans go for the tried and true classic play. You guys got Gold Fury. We'll go ahead and head over to the Pyro.
Ducky reads it, though, like a book, and we'll head back and make sure Julio and Shinto do not find that Pyromancer this time round. So Valkyries do extend their lead a little bit here, and as we look about the compositions, we talked about game 1, very focused for late game for Valkyries. This game, it's still leaning that way, in my opinion. It's a much more late game focused, especially when you're looking at the likes of, well, the unkillable King Arthur as the game goes on is what's going to happen. But then you've also got Johnny on the Tsukiyomi and, of course, Tiamat.
And then even the Scarab's Blessing going to help out with this dive. And Tiamat going to be able to split up the map with those lizards inside of the lane. So I think that the Valhalla Valkyries have primed themselves very well coming to approaching that 20-minute mark. We're going to see how they utilize this draft once the dance around the Fire Giant starts up in earnest. But for now, we can get a little bit of a breakdown of how the match stands. That's a 3-level lead in the jungle in favor of Johnny, but it's a 2-level lead for Shinto on the other end, who has been farming and farming and farming. That's just about all he's done so far this match. Triple goose eggs for the mid laner on the side of the Leviathans. Look, I think that if anything, the Leviathans might have an advantage once they start to group up first around the Fire Giant, just because they have so much burn potential. They generate that threat, force the Valhalla Valkyries to fight into their defensive positioning. But if the Valhalla Valkyries are able to show up first themselves, their dive-based composition, be it Johnny initiating with his own ultimate or Emilito doing the same, could really put the kibosh to what the Leviathans are looking for.
Rafa a little bit late on this rotation as he was in the solo lane, so Leviathans group up as 4 with the pressure they find in the duo 2 to strip away the red buff. But Rafa trying to punish them here. Pressure onto Rongyu, who will leap away, avoiding the root. But the follow-up damage there from Zeros does cause a problem, and a rocket from Emilito spells Rongyu's death. Ducky also rotates in again while Julio's not there, just to make sure Leviathans can't re-engage. I will say this second game, Ducky's got a better handle on these rotations over Julio, but it is costing him farm.
Yeah, he's just getting there first every single time, which is surprising considering Julio elected to go for a movement speed build. Talisman of Energy has movement speed inside the kit itself, but instead has been putting a little bit more emphasis on farming. I'm surprised to see the Leviathans just willing to let the fight go.
Oh, Zeros took way more damage than they expected.
Pyro!
Nuked off the map. Pyros goes to Leviathans 2 here. Ducky will juggle Shinto in the air and get the beads out of the Merlin, but Shinto's Merlin is something to always be feared. And Valkyries just recognizing that how quickly that Zeros disappeared. No time to even use a relic.
No, Zero's dead for 30 seconds as well. Could give the Leviathans an opportunity to yet again group up and try and look for a fight. Meanwhile, on the duo side of the map, there's a little bit of a skirmish. Yarkor up against Johnny.
And what is going on in that fight? Because I don't know who's going to win it. Yarkor will.
Death immunity.
With the ultimate. We'll definitely get a replay of that for you, but nice little play from Yarkor finding the 1v1 up against Johnny. Level 19 Suki versus the Chiron, and Chiron is the talk of the town still.
Look, that death immunity is just so hard to deal with, man. There's no way he's able to win out on that fight cleanly. But for now, the Leviathans have done a good job of turning the pace of this game back in their favor. We were starting to run away with it on the side of the Valkyries. They were looking at about a 3,000-4,000 gold lead. They're grouping up around the neutral objectives first. They even found that clean pick onto Rongyu. And then all of a sudden, one mistake is all it takes for the Leviathans to get back in.
Yarkor was trying to strip away the buff in the jungle, decides to take the fight. Moonlight used, Aegis used to avoid the damage, and then the turnaround play between the two. Johnny does get the kill technically, but then Yarkor finds the answer.
That's so tough to deal with, and now the Leviathan's trying to put the pressure on even more, looking towards this red buff with Zeros. Able to secure it this time around, gives the entirety of the Valkyries time to respawn, reset, and get ready for the next POI. Likely going to be a fight on this Oni Fury.
Yeah, good point. The Oni Fury could be quite important this time round too, especially with how the game's gone so far. Valkyries will be a little bit confident with how this game's gone. Their rotations and grouping have been a bit more consistent this time round. I'm a little bit nervous about the Merlin in the mid lane though, because Shinto is level 20 already, 3-level lead now over Zeros, and for me, it's his standout character in the game.
Yeah, he's really just so comfortable on this pick. It's surprising to me that they've been allowing him to have it so consistently. And by them, I mean the SPL at large doesn't seem to have enough respect for Shinto's Merlin. For now, though, player damage top in the charts as well. That's pretty surprising considering we haven't seen a ton of team fighting. Yeah. Usually it's soul laners near the top. Julio not too far behind. Only if you're going to be spawning in the next couple of seconds here. Take a peek at the grouping from the Leviathans. They're already trying to establish a vision advantage and force back the Valhalla Valkyries.
Yeah, Johnny just trying to clear out wards from distance there. He didn't want to go deep in that pit, if you noticed. The reason he was using the abilities, use the range autos of Tsukiyomi, and make sure he's not against the wall so he doesn't get stunned or blinked on from someone diving on in. 4-on-4 in the mid lane. Hunters still towards the left-hand side of the map. Both teams recognizing that this Gold Fury is on the table, or Oni Fury rather. And I'm like, wait, just keep an eye on Rafa if he goes for an engage. I wouldn't mind seeing Rongyu looking for an engage, however, onto Rafa. Just deny this sort of engage that we're kind of seeing out of Valkyries consistently, because that is their real threat, is finding this blink abduct. And there's only so long that's going to work for, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's going to be really squishy up against Shinto right now, and that abduct makes it so easy to set up the fire stance. Leviathans, first ones to the Fury, going to go ahead and pull it out. It's up to the Valhalla Valkyries to step forward.
And Ducky's going to step forward too. Abduct onto Rongyu. Focus on Rongyu on the backside, who has to ult for himself defensively. Takes a ton of damage, but keeps on ticking. Ducky, meanwhile, forced out by Julio. And Ducky's down below half health now. Remember, there's a little bit of regen on the side of Leviathans too. Panitam in the fray. Abducts away, has to beads to keep the pressure rolling. And the focus on Rafa is there. The damage is good. He dies, revives, and dies again. Rocket Man from Amelito can't find a home at all. Scared of going too deep, and now he is just too deep. Has no option to escape. Shinto finds a double. Zeros in the back, though, did find Panitum, but now he's got to run.
And he's got nobody around him. Meanwhile, Johnny on the other side of the fight trying to find Julio. Rongyu does pick up Zeros, and Julio does a great job kiting, gives Yarkor time to rejoin the fight.
Not much Ducky can really do there, other than just stand in the way and prevent Johnny from getting focused by Yarkor, but the collapse on Ducky is on. The ghastly breath from Rongyu doesn't really fit to find the slow, neither does the spit, but the slow from the Masterful's will get the beads out from Ducky.
That is a clean fight from the Leviathans. 1 for 3 in exchange for the Chaos team, and now they've got the pick of the litter. Do they want to head over to the Fire Giant, or is it going to be the Oni Fury? This time around, go for the safer play inside of Oni Fury, able to split up the map a little bit, and this is the signature Sanguine style. Oni Fury, clear the map out, have pressure in every single lane, and utilize it to step up to the fire.
So this was a 5-on-5 at the Oni Fury that time round, Myth. What went wrong from the Valkyries' point of view?
They got split up. Immediately, Zeros was forced off to the edge of the fight on this left-hand side, kind of veering towards the long lane, was able to pick up a kill in response, but we saw even stepping that far forward on his own was a death sentence for him. Ducky was not quite able to frontline as he had so hoped. Maybe thought he was going to be, as you said earlier, unkillable on this King Arthur. Not quite the case, but I think the real linchpin of it is any time a Khepri has to use Scarab's Blessing on himself, is not a good time.
Yeah, well, it worked out earlier for him in the game.
Yeah,
But
like
that
level 5.
And I think that was the worry we had with the abducts time and time again. The pressure onto Rongyu early was good, but it showed how difficult it was going to be to bring Rongyu down this game. And I do love the fact that he's gone for Spirit's Robe this time round too. Not an item you see too often, but that crowd control reduction from an abduct like that will cause problems.
Yeah, that additional defense you get from the hard CC as well means that he can just stick around inside these engagements, and being able to strip away some of the healing coming through from the Valkyries, be it from Ducky's Stone of Gaia or even just the Aussie procs from Emilito, means that Rongyu is in it for the long haul once these fights start up.
Pyromancer started by Leviathans though. They got the Oni Fury and they're looking for more now. Rafa won't be able to force a fight there whatsoever. He's watching where they're all positioned though. You can see the right-hand side of the map there. Oni minions will get that tier 1 tower as Rafa does abduct onto Rongyu again. He has been a focal target so far in this game, Rongyu, but I think it's time to give up the goose on chasing that one as he's just too tanky.
Yeah, it's just Raffer's really only great target is Rongyu. He's the furthest one forward. Raffer can't dive much deeper than that because of how much damage output the Leviathans have so far. So I understand it's almost a catch-20. Well, I don't want to do it to Rongyu, but he's the only one I can.
Well, Zeros needs help there and has to beads away from the torment from Rongyu coming through. Damage onto Yorko as he's in the fray as Ducky's spinning around in the middle trying to cause a problem. You can see Emilito forced away from Julio at the same time. Rafa ults himself to buy a window and everyone grew from Leviathans looking for the turnaround kill. And Yorko is dead. Rongyu gets one. Yorko revives, I believe, off that ultimate too.
Wow.
Shoot from him and he gets a double. Great work from Leviathans. Both teams playing around these revives almost there. The Kepri revives himself. Leviathans stick around to secure the kill. Valkyries go aggressive. And then Valkyries have the same thing happen to them with the Chiron.
Man, Chiron is just so strong here in Season 8. No other hunter survives that engagement. I don't care who you are.
Rama.
He was surrounded by 4 members. Ram goes up to the air, dies. Well, Freya might just kill everyone with lifesteal, but Centaurus in of itself makes this god incredibly strong. And we saw exactly how that matchup pans out. If Raffer is forced to use the Scarab's Blessing on himself, respawns at low HP, that's a great target for Yarkor to respawn off of.
You hit all 3 of those shots with no extra power, you're doing 1,000 damage base. Obviously there's armor involved too, but not a bad amount of damage for that, as well as a 60% scaling. Leviathans get the FG, take this right-hand Phoenix too, and one reason that Phoenix was so easy was the Oni minion wave that came down, because it took the tier 1, and I'm pretty sure because of that big engagement there, it managed to get even more damage onto that tier 2.
Oni minion wave also on the left-hand side of the map able to strip away the duo side tier 1 tower. So now it's only 2 tier 2s standing between the Leviathans and the 2 remaining birds on the side of the Valhalla Valkyries. But the defense is pretty strong from this Valkyries draft. Zero's going to have a very easy time keeping minion waves out, can even spawn his own minions to kind of contend with the fire minion waves on the right-hand side, almost as an unofficial 6-man, just making sure that no one really has to dedicate their body to keeping these minions out of the Titan room, as well as just having Johnny there to finish off these kills from a range with Piercing Moonlight. There are ways to fight back in, but in particular, I need to see more from Emilito. These ultimates from him have been lacking so far.
You found 1 or 2 that looked semi-decent at times. But
in 30 minutes?
Yeah, he definitely struggled at once upon a time. I will say, though, you did bring up a good point there thinking about it. Valkyries, this game, have been the initiators in every fight. I don't think I've seen Leviathans initiate a fight. It's been mainly on Valkyries' terms, and where Leviathans have found the win. When it comes to the Fire Giant defense that they're trying to do here, Valkyries, maybe they should force them to commit rather than engage themselves.
Yeah, you want to stay inside this Phoenix range. That's got to be the entire strategy. If anyone could close gap on a Shinto, it's going to have to be Johnny. Best of luck to the Valkyries.
Team's just trying to poke each other out for the time being. No minion wave involved just yet, but Julio jumps to the backside at the same time, gets abducted away. By the time hunted onto Emilito, got a very early ultimate from the Scarab's Blessing. Shinto, though, took out Zeros, and Johnny gets Julio in response. 1 for 1 so far. Phoenix still stands, and the minion wave taken care of. Phoenix is down to half health.
Very early usage of the Centaurus there from Yarkor, just trying to force back the Valkyries, create a little bit of space. Almost how we saw in Season 7, Ram initiating fights with his own ultimate, just finding that poke.
Rongyu sells his ult, though, and he does go into the engagement and try to frontline for his team. Picks up 1, drags him in, and Shinto takes him down again. Emilito, though, does get at least 1 as Shinto ends his life in response to make it a 1 for 1 between those 2. And the moment, though, this left-hand Phoenix will eventually go down. Leviathans have done the damage, but they're looking for more.
Yeah, Shinto doing his best Baskin impression, using the flicker forward. That is so toxic, Shinto.
Yeah.
No way you can end here.
I'm okay with it. EU boys will give what they get in the long run. Paniton, meanwhile, leaps up and down. He's in too deep at the moment. He's trying to keep up above, and
it worked.
Instead, he's going under. Yes, I just made a really bad song reference. And that could actually be game here, as Valkyries, who have done very well in this, just took a bad skirmish towards the end there that ends up costing him the game where it should have been over in that moment in time.
Just one poor fight around the Fire Giant completely changes the pace. Johnny also getting sold out by Yarkor kind of hurts their pacing as well. I thought maybe we'd see the Valkyries be the initiators again on the Fire Giant, but you brought up a good point. They initiated every team fight, but they weren't the ones starting the objectives. They weren't the ones setting the pace of the game.
That's true.
It was Leviathan saying, you have to step to us. You have to come up to this neutral territory and take the fight. Leviathans won every time.
I will say, coming into this one, I think a lot of people expected Valkyries to still struggle. They're struggling all year long. We'll see if they can continue to gather momentum. They look good, though, there.
They
in
did.
my opinion, I think Game 2 is probably the best I've seen Valkyries look so far this season.
Oh, they've got a couple wins, Hindu. You got to give them credit for their wins.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. But hey, that was Phase 1, and who cares about that? Because now we're in Phase 2.
Fair.
After the break, we'll break down the whole of that set and get ourselves ready for the second set of the day. We'll be back after this.
Hold on. Look at Julio. He doesn't want to finish off the other kill. He wants more on the back. Oh, no, he's going to do it to him. Gets Paul. Needs the cooldown. Julio nearly got the double on the back end. This man is nuts. 202 on the tier out of the solo. My soul is tainted.
Welcome back, everyone, here to the SMITE Pro League Season 8 Phase 2, Week 1, Set 1, all powered by Alienware. Maybe too many numbers there, more than necessary. Either way is coming through, and the Leviathans, eke themselves out a nice win. And you, at home, you can win, too, by getting yourself a really sick PC, maybe a new monitor, you might need a new keyboard, maybe a new mouse, anything, all of the above, if you go to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW. For those who are wondering right now, not only has Alienware come on board as our title sponsor, but our pros are playing on the Aurora R10 Ryzen desktop, and they have the 25-inch 240Hz gaming monitor that Alienware provides as well. So they're looking good, they're playing well, the game's running smooth, and it looks great. Again, smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW. So thanks again to Alienware for partnering with us here in Season 8. And of course, go follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and join their global community at alienwarearena.com. But once again, my name's Gormizer. Joining me is Taco, and Taco, they do the thing. There's really loud thunder that's coming through. You can see the sea monster is truly cresting out of there. The waves on the Leviathans logo makes more sense now. I mean, it's a little closer there in Game 2, but they still find the same victory.
Unfortunately, the Johnny train just stopped one too short. He had a really strong showing, though, on the Tsukiyumi. I was definitely impressed by the way that the Valhalla Valkyries were seeming to control a good portion of that early game, but once it got to the mid-game gore, that's still a segment that the Leviathans roster definitely flourishes at, and they just took full advantage of just forcing Raffer to having to burn that Scarab's Blessing preemptively throughout these team fights. In the early game, Leviathans were punished accordingly, though, by the Valkyries. I think that Raffer actually did a great job showing his presence and punishing the Leviathans for overstepping their boundaries, not giving enough respect to that Khepri's positioning early on. But this is actually the moment where I feel things truly went south here for the Valhalla Valkyries score, because Johnny failing to find that punish kill on Hardcore, who was looking for an invade on the purple buff, that is tough, because it just put an immediate halt to all of that map pressure that the Valkyries had been really working hard to attain in the first place. And after that, it was kind of just team fight era for the Leviathans.
I don't know if I've seen a carry frontline as much as Hardcore did in a lot of those fights. I mean, he is in there for a lot of those, and I think that's something we always say, 5-1 and 8, 6-0 and 7, you get those great slash lines from Shinto and Hardcore and those great performances, thanks to what Julio, Panatom, and Wrong you are able to help turn around, although a little bit of it was also just them making sick plays. That one play, like you had said, harkening back to the death that kind of really ends Johnny there for the set.
And it's a tough one, because I don't blame Johnny in the slightest. I don't think
there's nothing you can do about it.
Like, he had the right idea. He's like, hey, what's this guy doing here at our purple buff, you know? But at the same time, sometimes best just doesn't cut it, and a little unfortunate there for the team. But Game 2 at least looked promising, I think, especially in comparison to what we saw from Valkyries all throughout Split 1. So got to remember, it's only the first set. Plenty more to come, plenty more opportunities for this team to bounce back.
And, I mean, good news for all Leviathan fans that are out there, right? Because you get to come into this. They get the first win of Phase 2, a nice 2-0 to start off the day. Coming up shortly, we're going to have the Bolts and the Warriors. And it should be noted, the Valkyries will be playing again tomorrow to start the day off up against the Warriors. So we're going to get kind of a doubleheader of two of the matchups that we saw today. But all of that talk, that's for later. That's for Death segment in Set 2. That's for, I guess, tomorrow as well, since I talked about that set a little bit. Right now, it is all about the Leviathans and all about their win. And who better to talk about than them themselves? We have Wrong You standing by. And Wrong You, I mean, first off, we got to see you play Cerberus. It's nice to see you kind of branching out. The Yamoja, the Ymir were all taken away from you. How's it feel getting target banned?
Well, I don't know. I'm getting used to, I think, right, at this point. So I just gotta, play more gods. So in playoffs, I got more gods to play, I guess.
And, I mean, this is a good way to start off the phase, right? You get a nice 2-0, you come in, maybe a little bit of a stumble, we can call it there, at the beginning of Game 2, where things are starting to go in favor of the Valkyries, but you fight from behind. I mean, what is your kind of trajectory for the rest of the phase? We've seen you dominate, but how well do you think you can control some of these other top teams?
Well, right now we're kind of starting, not playing a lot of the game, but right now we're back in the grind, and I think we're just gonna work on our god pool, maybe some strategies, because I feel like that's what happens. Also, maybe work on the nervous when we're playing important matches, and keep going.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, that was actually your only set this week so far, right? You play this week, and then next time we're going to see you is the mid-season patch. Everything's going to change. Do you expect that a lot of what you and your team have been doing up to this point this year is going to be drastically changed coming into next week?
Well, hopefully not, but I mean, it's like a new meta, right? So, and especially against the Dragons, they're a really, really good team. I like to play against them. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Well, awesome, man. It sounds like you guys have everything figured out. Again, congratulations on your win. A nice 2-0 here against the Valkyries. Thanks for your time, and go enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Awesome. And with that, we're going to go to a quick break, so we'll be right back again with the Bolts versus the Warriors.